Welcome back to the party, everybody. This is Morty, and I am your host, Lutch, aka TheIndianJesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Everybody, hit that like and subscribe. You know that would do it for you. And let's party! Welcome, welcome, welcome. We got our boy Box in the building. Welcome, 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 guys. I am very excited for this one. I missed you. Guys, on Friday. Again, I did start a new job and, scheduling was a little messed up, but that should be solved by now. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, just like right now. So you may have seen some clips going around of Jordan Peterson on the Jubilee surrounded thing. And, wow, it is interesting. Let's just dive right in, guys. As always, if you cannot hear the video, please do let me know.
My first claim, atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
So this is actually shout out to Alex O'Connor, because this is something that I would have argued against until I realized that. So if you remember when we were talking with Alex O'Connor and Rainn Wilson, Alex O'Connor, the agnostic atheist, was talking about how if I don't know what God you're talking about, then I can't say whether I do or I don't believe in it. And so for most of the time, I'm just going to say I'm agnostic, because if you're saying God is consciousness or God is love or God is, people or whatever, I believe in all that stuff. I don't call it God. And so agnostic is the better way to go. So if we are not sure of the context and you're still going to claim to be an atheist, I do think I agree with the prompt, but I think I'm also going to disagree with Jordan Peterson himself. So again, the prompt being atheists don't understand what they're rejecting. Yep.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here.
Hey, shout out to Ty Cobb. Welcome to the party. Oh, a little nervous? I think you should be. We got our boy Tijuana Border Jumper. Welcome, guys. Very good to see you. As always, please do hit that like button on your way in.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here that atheists don't know what they're rejecting. My background is in studying to become a traditional Catholic priest, daily mass, daily rosary, going on long retreats, deep into the magisterium and biblical hermeneutics. Like, I was thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion?
So clearly this isn't just some random blue-haired screaming, "Oh my God, Sky Daddy." We got somebody who knows what he's talking about here.
So deeply?
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood. Your aim was off then. So there's always the possibility that it's still off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out.
Then it seems.
So he's trying to say, because you were wrong before, it is possible that you are wrong now. Fair. But that's not an argument as to why, in fact, you are wrong now.
Off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out.
Then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can claim that people don't know something that you know about their life despite not having met them?
Well, it's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheists claim that there's no God is a generic claim.
Remember, the atheism is not a claim in and of itself at all. Atheism is the rejection of the claim that God or God exists. So again, we have somebody saying atheist, meaning someone who believes there is no God. That is not necessarily the case.
It's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheists claim that there's no God is a generic claim. In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but my experience with atheists is twofold. Is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And
I've experienced that too with atheists.
Often been hurt by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that's left them with an animus.
But I think that you have a reductive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like three people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the God that you're rejecting? Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian, they mean some sort of God that is all powerful, all perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion.
Nope. He believes it in a more that hierarchical structure of morality as opposed to the average Christian who believes in the truth claims. Shout out to Zippy, and Lee. Welcome to the party. So the problem is, as always, treating religion as an absolute. If God is absolute, then religion is just philosophy. God is not, then any God will do, mooting the whole thing. Very well said. Welcome to the party. Very good to see you.
In Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion. And there are as many gods out there as there are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is.
Oh, guys, check out the Swoggle. We've got peanut butter on the table. Morty can get his peanut butter if we get 15 super chats or a $50 total. Let's get it, baby. Shout out to our boy, Guam Tech. Welcome to the party. Very good to see ya. We also got Swirls Lambo. Said JVP is in a huge dork since his daughter rammed Andrew Tate and turned him into a benzo vegetable. Yeah, hard to disagree with that. Welcome to the party, guys. Let's dive right back in.
There are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is. So it seems
well,
like
if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other.
Exactly. That's the point. You all use the same word, God, but you don't actually mean the same thing. So yeah, all of that discussion is irrelevant.
The mere fact of communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. And it's certainly not the case that I regard any archetypal manifestation whatsoever as equally religious. So that's not a real claim.
Shout out to John Doe. Welcome to the party.
Let me give you an example. For example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
Yes.
Now, Moses is a faithful servant of God and a good man. At least that's the case within the confines of the story.
One possible interpretation.
It's the case within the confines of the story, obviously. But
when we look at the Bible.
So notice how he's obviously, then he's going to turn around and be like, well, what do you mean by the?
Confines of the story, obviously. But
when we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything, because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has everybody has disagreed historically on. It seems like even the most benign detail about a book this big, and it seems like you can only say that the Bible says something if you first presuppose that it's univocal.
Yep. And guys, I did forget to mention, we know that Jubilee can be kind of copyright heavy, so I think it should do it automatically. But in case they nuke the stream, I have another one set to go. It should give you the link here, but if not, just go to the channel. As soon as it's done, we are picking right back up where we left off. Screw you, Jubilee!
So your claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant? Because the alternative claim is that he's good.
Know. Because we can't talk to those authors.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So
we also have a short time here. So I want to get to the core of what you're arguing here. And I'd love if we could.
The core of what I'm arguing is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So I'm trying to give you an example of what's being rejected and its complexity.
And so again, even if we agree with the prompt that atheists don't understand what they're rejecting, that doesn't mean that God does or does not exist. I could believe that something does not, or I could have a lack in a belief of a thing. I don't need to understand what that thing is to lack a belief in it. And lacking a belief does not mean I'm claiming that it doesn't exist.
Okay, so God rewards Moses with a glimpse of the divine. So
that's a good way to put it. He has his own dictionary. He's got his own dictionary.
Okay, so God rewards Moses with a glimpse of the divine. So this is a definition of the God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
A possible one.
I said I didn't say the. I said
And so notice how snippy he's being. Usually, what would we expect with somebody who has, pretty broad ideas of religion and is accepting of them, whether or not they believe, and an atheist? Who do we expect to be the snippy one, the smug one, the jumping down? Like, what are you doing, bro? Chill out. chill out. Nobody's saying that you're a horrible person. We're just having a conversation. I didn't say this. I said that. He's agreeing with you. He said, yes, when possible, one possible one.
I said,
yeah, listen, he's agreeing with
God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
A possible one.
Yeah, so he's agreeing with you.
I said, yeah. I didn't say the. I said,
That is possible, yes.
Okay. So despite the fact that Moses is a stellar character and he's had a long and difficult life and can withstand a lot of difficulty and travail, God puts him between two cliffs. So he can just see a crack of what's in front of him. And when God walks by, he allows him to see his back. Okay, so the implication of that story is that the divine is fundamentally unknowable. It's a pinnacle experience, and that people in their finitude have to be shielded from a comprehensive vision of the basis of reality. Well, that's not the God that's defined in that manner, right? It's not a simple personification. It's not a simple old man in the sky. It's something that in its essence is unknowable and overwhelming. And that isn't, in my experience, the God that's defined by atheists who are attempting to undermine the story. I mean,
shout out to King Nirvana. Welcome to the party. So that's the same thing. He is more aggressive than usual. Yeah, like why? Why are you so angry, bro? Welcome. We also got our boy Nick Lucetti. Welcome to the party, guys. Very, very, very good to see ya. And I said Kermit is grumpy. A little bit.
In my experience, the God that's defined by atheists who are attempting to undermine the story. I mean, it's the same claim, for example, that you're a finite creature and that you face something that in the final analysis is unknowable and that you have to establish a relationship with it regardless of your inability to perceive or even withstand perceiving the whole. Okay, is there a problem with that?
I mean, the problem...
Hey, shout out to our true disciple. Welcome. Oh, where's my applause there? Welcome to the party. So I've never seen him act like this. I mean, I've seen him act like this, but in ways that it made sense because he was in a debate or a heated discussion. But like we always talk about that goodwill. He hasn't built up goodwill to be like, snapping like this. Very, very weird. Welcome. And shout out to our true disciple, Avery.
To perceive or even withstand perceiving the whole. Okay, is there a problem with that?
I mean, the problem is that when we look at, famously, when you've been asked, do you believe in God? The question becomes, what do we mean by God? And in the Bible, it's not even clear the biblical authors know what God is because Yahweh has historically emerged from an early storm god, a deity that doesn't exhaust the category of deity, and that has changed over the Old Testament. Does God have physicality? Does God not have physicality? It seems like, yes, if you define religion to mean anybody that has an aim, anybody that looks at the unknown, anybody who wants to go from chaos to order is inherently religious, then yes. But also in the same way, I could define atheist as somebody who doesn't dogmatically believe in a religion or somebody who doesn't regularly attend religious services or belong to a denomination. To help especially the audience kind of like boil this down, there was a lot of words there. That the central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite. A central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
No, I said that we were finite and we had to establish a relationship with the infinite.
Shout out to Biggie Bong. Welcome to the party. So this is what happens when people don't actually do the research. That is free. It is for. Let's use some. I don't know when your sentences are supposed to start and stop. So this is what happens when people don't actually do the research. That is free. It is 400 hours of videos on his YouTube page for Jordan Peterson. Because people don't do the research. They assume his anger is that which they view as absurd. However, if you do, Jordan Peterson, you would know he doesn't see the person. He's not mad at the person. That is, I completely agree with the fact that, he has all this stuff that he's reacting to. That doesn't change the fact that he's having a conversation with another human being. You don't get to bring in baggage from the rest of your life and throw it on another person who's trying to have a rational conversation with you. That's not socially how we do things. Welcome to the party. King said if he was more docile, we may be saying he should be more aggressive. So I don't know. I guess it's about balance. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this came out yesterday. What's the date? Yesterday. Yep. He said Jordan Peterson sees through everything. Oh, wow. Maybe he's God. And what he sees is the actual ideological possession of ideas that have destroyed cultures over time. So his level of emotion is actually correct. I'm not even going to argue with that. But the level of the emotion that you feel and the level of emotion that you project onto other people need not be the same thing. This kid that he's sitting across from did not create that level of emotion. So yes, he is wrong.
But infinite?
No, I said that we were finite and we had to establish a relationship with the infinite.
Yeah, then in that case, then we're all religious, but then I can do the same thing and define one particular element of atheism.
Yep.
It seems like we both have a reductive view of what the other side looks like, to the point where a conversation seems incoherent, and not just incoherent, but not in the way that the average Christian understands Christianity to be.
Do you have a problem?
Pause there. Sorry, you've been voted.
Hey, shout out to Devon. Welcome to the party. We definitely will get that going. So I saw this yesterday. It's frustrating. He's not a Christian. He just likes their values. It's that simple. I said, shit, me too. I'm not a Christian. I don't claim to believe, but I like the values. Why can't we just have that? Welcome to the party.
Voted out by the majority.
Good question.
Hey, how's it going?
Right? And it does say, no, so it doesn't. The title is Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists. So it doesn't actually say Christian in the title. It says Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
David.
David, good to see you.
Tell me everything.
Oh, did they? Was it different before? Interesting. Fair enough. I mean, he's definitely not a Christian, but yeah, that might have been a little miscommunication. Context said, JVP is saying people are all more spiritual than they admit, more than he's saying we're all religious. Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely agree with that.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
David.
David, good to see you.
Tell me everything that you know about the Polynesian deity Lono, L-O-N-O.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you don't have a belief in Lono then? So how do you must not know what you're missing? Okay, fine. But where does that get us? That was his entire argument of the prompt.
So L-O-N-O.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you're rejecting something without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not rejecting it. No more than I'm rejecting.
Do you believe in Lono?
If you don't believe in Lono, then you are rejecting that belief and saying, no, I don't have a belief in that. You're not saying you disbelieve in Lono. You're just saying you do not have a belief in Lono.
Without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not rejecting it. No more than I'm rejecting.
Do you believe in Lono?
I don't know anything.
Do you believe in Lono? Do you believe that he is a deity that exists in the world, exists in the universe, that exists in the existence of everything? Do you believe that Lono?
I'll answer that question once you answer my question, which is, do I reject everything that I'm ignorant of? Because that's your presupposition that undergirds your argument. And unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
My question is.
So Guandox says not believing and rejecting are two different things, though. Absolutely correct. So before this dude brought up Lono, then he was not. He was just not believing in Lono. Then the idea was presented to him. There's a Polynesian god named Lono. Do you believe in that? Then he said no. So the not being ignorance and rejecting things are two different things. But yes, once an idea has been presented to you, you either reject it or you don't.
Supposition that undergirds your argument, and unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
My question is quite simple.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's formulated accurately.
Do you believe
it is
that Lono exists? Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons.
Oh, what did you have for breakfast? Or how would you feel if you didn't have breakfast? I'm not going to answer that question. You just said you'd never heard of it. So why not just say no? Why not just say no?
As I just described, you already insisted that if I reject something, that if I'm ignorant of something, I reject it. Do you think that?
Right, but then he was asked, do you believe in it? Yes or no? So if he's not aware of it, then you would say, no, I don't believe in that. That's rejecting it.
Everyone in the world has to know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
Hey, shout out to Box. And indeed, happy Memorial Day. And we will give a treat for Morty on this one. Thank you so very, very much for being a member for 6 months, guys. Remember, sign up. And speaking of which, why don't we do this? If you guys are enjoying the show, the party rages on 24/7 over in our Discord. The link is pinned to the top of the chat and is absolutely free to join 24/7. We're in there hanging out, having a great time. And guys, it is absolutely free. However, if you are a member of this channel here on YouTube, you can scroll right below that video and hit that join button. Starts at $2.99. There's a few different tiers, but $2.99 will get you in. It gets you members only live streams here on YouTube, all that other good stuff. But it opens up the full Discord server. So we've got the free chat that is open to anyone. Anybody can join and talk. But as you can see, that is just one of our channels. There's a bunch of different channels here, including our disciple chat for members only, our word of the day watch party, where we're talking about all this stuff. And of course, we have the voice channel here, where we are hanging out at this moment. Shout out to everybody in the Discord server. Say hello and tell them to come and join. There you go, guys. Simple as that. See you there. And of course, remember, guys, if you join today, even the free chat, the link that is pinned at the top of the chat, that gets you in the free. But if you join tonight, then you get full access to the after party. We'll give you the day pass so you can come and hang out. Come on through. And of course, Grontek is going to go right to his daddy's favorite question. Well, what do you mean by believe? Accept the claim as in adherence with reality. That's what I mean.
You think that everyone in the world has to know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
Straw man.
I think in order for your argument to be true, in order for it to be true that we atheists don't understand what we're rejecting, then you need to also apply that to yourself and to Christians and to Muslims and to any other person on this earth, where if you don't understand what you're rejecting the belief in, then you can't reject the belief in it. That's the implication of your claim.
I didn't say that I rejected the belief in Lona. I said I didn't know who Lona was. I didn't say anything about rejecting.
That's because I've asked.
Right. So maybe I don't know who Yahweh is. And that's why I'm an atheist. Not because I reject Yahweh, but because I don't know Yahweh. It's the same thing.
I said I didn't know who Lona was. I didn't say anything about rejecting.
That's because I've asked you several times and you haven't. But let me get to my even greater point.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't need to do anything, but if he wants to convince people, in fact, he does.
You're saying atheists don't understand what religion is or what God is in order to be able to reject it fully or completely. We have someone over here who studied it in their own way. I've studied religion. I have a degree in religious studies, specialty in...
God damn it. I got to run upstairs and I don't want them to claim this. Let me just play this one more time. Sorry, guys. I'll be 30 seconds. 30 seconds. If you guys are enjoying the show, the party rages on 24/7 over in our Discord. The link is pinned to the top of the chat and is absolutely free to join 24/7. We're in there hanging out, having a great time. And guys, it is absolutely free. However, if you are a member of this channel here on YouTube, you can scroll right below that video and hit that join button. Starts at $2.99. There's a few different tiers, but $2.99 will get you in. It gets you members only live streams here on YouTube, all that other good stuff. But it opens up the full Discord server. So we've got the free chat that is open to anyone. Anybody can join and talk. But as you can see, that is just one of our channels. There's a bunch of different channels here, including our disciple chat for members only, our word. All right. See, less than 30 seconds. Come on and join us in Discord. Like I said, guys, if you join for free, you get a day pass. All right, where were we? Yeah, right. I didn't want to pull a Jenks nephew. Shout out to a Dingus. Welcome to the party. Let's dive right back in.
In their own way. I've studied religion. I have a degree in religious studies, specialty in Christianity and Mediterranean traditions.
So again, not just a militant atheist.
And further than that, beyond me, Pew Research studies suggest that atheists and agnostics actually know more about religion and about religious stories, the foundational principles, than believers.
That's because they're more religious than they think they are.
Okay.
Or more spiritual.
They're concerned with deep matters, and one of the defining characteristics of someone who's oriented in a religious direction is that they're concerned with deep matters.
Okay.
In fact, it's virtually definition.
Right, but they also have to...
So again, we're obfuscating the semantics. So if you're, what do you say, deeply...
religious direction is that they're concerned with deep matters.
So if you're concerned with deep matters, now that has to do with religion. So it doesn't matter if you believe in the truth claims. If you think about stuff deeply, that makes you religious. Semantic obfuscation.
Okay, in fact, it's virtually definition.
Right, but they also have to identify with
that.
a religious tradition and accept the foundational stories that go along
Well,
with
that would mean more that they're sectarian than that they're religious. And most people, for example, in the United States, deny that they're religious, but accept that they're spiritual.
Let's pause there. You've been
And is that a problem?
voted out by the majority.
Aha! Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you doing?
Good, how
What's
are
your
you?
name?
I'm Greg. Nice to meet
Hi,
you.
Greg.
Okay, so
Okay, he seems like might be a little bit more, like a typical leftist. But I'm judging. Let's see.
I feel like you're getting at this idea of polysemy, where we have multiple related meanings for a word, right? Like, for example, a famous painting can be emotionally moving in that it changes my emotional state. And when I was on the highway coming here to the studio, I was physically moving. I was changing my position. If I said, I believe the Mona Lisa is very moving, and you said, you don't really understand what you're saying, it's nailed to the wall, I would say that you're the one who doesn't understand what I'm saying. Now,
Dilly to that. Oh, was I wrong? That is a beautiful way to demonstrate how the muddying of the waters of, well, what do you mean by believe? Like, if you want to have the discussion of let's dig into belief and what that actually is, that's fine. But let's not pretend that there's not a colloquial definition of belief. And when somebody says, I believe in God, that, or let's not even say, I left my keys on my bedside table, that you have no fucking clue what they're talking about.
not the other way around. And the way that relates to this is there are many concepts of God, and I'll admit, I find a lot of what you say about that interesting. I'm familiar with it.
Really quick, Papa Lutch says the Mona Lisa is the biggest hoax in all of human history. We went to Paris, we saw it. It's like that big, and it's not that nice looking. And he just thinks that everybody loves it because they're told to love it. What do you guys think? Actually, we got a poll going, right? So our current poll. So do you think most people who know of Jordan Peterson think he is a Christian? And we are kind of split, but no takes it with 55% saying that you do not think that he is Christian. And I agree. And even in this, he is not going to tell us. So I'm going to do a new poll about the Mona Lisa.
Concepts of God, and I'll admit, I find a lot of what you say about that interesting. I'm familiar with it. The idea of this kind of Jungian hierarchical thing, or as a metaphor or a symbol, or the kind of, atheist, materialist, literalist idea of a agentic, omnipotent, omniscient being that intervenes in reality, right? So when I'm saying that I reject the concept of God, I'm aware of these other definitions of God. But I think that when we use words, we tend to only imply one meaning at a time. So the same way that I would say the Mona Lisa is moving emotionally, but I would not say it's moving physically. I would say I reject the concept of God in this very literal way. But
what literal way?
The way
that there's not a man in the sky.
That God is this omniscient, omnipotent, agentic, supernatural being that sent his son down and has, caused miracles and all these things like that. The idea of God is
Do you think that there's an underlying unity of things?
Biggie, this is you're supposing that we have no idea who Jordan Peterson is. Just because somebody disagrees with Jordan Peterson doesn't mean that they don't know what he was doing in 2017. Like on this very playlist, I have this video that is up next to watch, and it's called "Mega 2017 Jordan Peterson Great Again." I know who we're talking about. This isn't some random thing that I just decided to oh, what's this? You're assuming that because we disagree that we don't know. You are wrong, sir.
Caused miracles and all these things like that. The idea of God is
Do you think that there's an underlying unity of things?
Could you explain that question?
Well, scientists, for example, believe that science unifies in a comprehensive theory. Do you? Yes? No? Or that there are multiple competing truths? Those are the options. Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths.
Unify.
I know that, for example, like in physics, people are looking for like a theory of everything.
And why do you think they're doing that?
Because they think that there is something underlining, and that very well may be. But you don't get to claim that there is before we determine that, in fact, there is.
It's interesting. It's helpful.
But they also believe that there's an underlying unity to things.
In a sense, yeah. Like, like the material world and time and space are probably governed by universal laws and principles.
Partly that, yes, yes. But that the same thing might extend to a broader domain that would include imagination and value.
Could you help me connect that to the prompt?
Well,
yeah, that's precisely. I put that in the description that he fell out of his, or was it in the description or maybe on the tweet or whatever, but he fell out of his Daily Wire bubble and bonked his head. This ain't it, bro. This ain't it. Go back to who you were in 2017, please.
Would include imagination and value.
Could you help me connect that to the prompt?
Well, I'm trying to define God, the God that I don't think atheists do a very good job of defining. Here's another question.
Why is it, what? Why is it our job to describe the thing that we don't believe in that you're trying to put into our politics and society? What? Oh, it's your job to define it. And then if you do that well, then I'll be like, okay, you've presented the evidence and now I accept this claim. It's not my job to define your God. Get the fuck out of here.
I'm trying to define God, the God that I don't think atheists do a very good job of defining. Here's another.
Don't you think if Christians did a good job of defining God, that atheists would be able to do so just as well?
Question for you. What do you think guides you in your determination of whether or not what you're saying to me is true?
Can we go back? Can we stay on what we were talking about?
We are.
Okay.
You're just uncomfortable with the question.
No, I feel like you just kind of throwing.
Projection. No, so you were uncomfortable with where the conversation was going. So you're trying to move. You're trying to move the goalpost to something else that doesn't has no relation to the prompt that you picked. Oh man, that was bad. That was bad. Like I said, the thing I'll push back on about JVP here is that Christians don't define God well either. Yeah, as I was saying. And so if they could, if there was a unified definition of what God meant, then atheists would just use that definition. It's not our responsibility to come up with a definition for what you believe in that we don't like. What?
Can we stay on what we were talking about?
We are.
Okay.
You're just uncomfortable with the question.
No, I feel like you're just kind of throwing different spaghetti at the wall.
I'm not.
Okay.
I asked you a very specific question. What
a very specific, unrelated question.
Is it that you think guides you when you're talking to me to help you determine whether what you say is true?
And so this is going to go down the Andrew Wilson thing. If you have nothing to ground your morals in, so therefore they don't count, even though I ground my morals in a thing that I can't prove, I'm just going to call it objective.
Logic, memory, reasoning, sensory information.
How do you distinguish that from being governed by something that's false?
An interesting question.
How do you know the difference when you speak between what's true and what's false? So you can imagine.
Oh, John Doe asks, what's the confusion in how Christians define God? Well, I will allow you to discover this yourself. So the next time you go into church, think to yourself, what is the definition of the word God? Just think to yourself. Then turn to your right and ask the person sitting next to you in the pew, what is the definition of God? I guarantee you, you will get a different answer than what's in your head. Might be similar, might be overlap, but it's going to be a different answer. Again, we're talking about definitions. Then you turn to the person to your left and you say, can you define the word God? And you're going to get a third definition. So that's what we mean.
An interesting question.
How do you know the difference when you speak between what's true and what's false? So you can imagine.
Right? I can infer.
From what principles?
So, and what are you getting at?
I'm getting at the fact that your conscience guides you. Is that reasonable?
Conscience is defined by my empathy and my reason, or my foundational.
Define it any way you want.
Okay, so that's how I'm defining my conscience. Is my,
now we can define things any way we want. Now we can define things any way we want. It doesn't matter.
My conscience is my sense of,
right and wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Where does that come from?
I would say that comes from an evolved capacity to empathize and a recognition of the benefits of engaging with and nurturing that capacity. And then that empathy is constrained and guided by reason, right? Like, for example,
and a few principles lead me to pick a choice. It's not hard and it's not God. Let's also keep in mind that many Christians who do accept the Bible as the ultimate authority on morality don't believe in all aspects of the Bible. So then the question becomes, if you are a Christian who believes in some of the Bible, by what mechanism are you using to determine which parts of the Bible you follow and which parts of the Bible you don't?
Of engaging with and nurturing that capacity. And then that empathy is constrained and guided by reason, right? Like, for example,
I didn't say it would be contradictory, but it would be different. That's what we're saying. It's different.
I am driving down the highway. There's a kitten in the road. I'm going to empathetically feel, oh my God, I want to save the kitten. But then reasonably, like, I'm going to get hit by a car, right? So that's sort of the process through which I make ethical decisions.
Okay, how do you...
Guamtek's asking, where do those principles come from? What if we don't know? What if we don't know? What changes if we said we don't know? Does that make them any less of principles? Genuine question. Does that make them less of principles if we don't know where they come from?
I'm going to get hit by a car, right? So that's sort of the process through which I make ethical decisions.
Okay,
how do you constrained by reason?
Do you think that people can differ in their response to something empathically?
Yeah.
Is there a mediating principle that can tell you one person who's empathic and another person who's empathic that disagree, who's correct?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we'd have to, talk it out, right? We do that in real life all the time when we have, whether that's a discussion with a friend about the right thing to do in a situation, whether that's a policy discussion about law, right? That's where we can converse with each other, think about things, explain our perspectives, and then kind of reach a conclusion, right?
So I asked, what if we don't know where the principles came from? And I said, would that matter? And he said, maybe not, but does it mean you understand the principles? Yes. Not necessarily, but if I understand the principles and I don't understand where they came from, why does that matter? Why is that an issue? If I understand what the principles are and why they are beneficial, why does it matter if I know where they came from? Again, genuine question, not challenging you.
We can converse with each other, think about things, explain our perspectives, and then kind of reach a conclusion, right? I think we do that all the time.
So Elijah, the prophet Elijah, defined God in the Old Testament as the voice of conscience within.
Okay.
That's a definition.
So you're saying by that definition of God, I guess, see, this kind of goes back to what I'm saying initially.
I'm not defining it. Elijah defined it.
Okay, so as Elijah defines God.
It's defined that way in Jonah.
Okay, but you are taking that definition. So again, you're being petty.
I'm saying initially.
I'm not defining it. Elijah defined it.
Okay, so as Elijah defines God.
It's defined that way in Jonah too.
Okay, so as
Cardinal Newman also defined it that way.
As I'm sure you know many people who defined it that way. And it's impressive. You're a very knowledgeable person.
I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm just pointing out to you.
Bro, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. He's trying to build that goodwill. He's trying. No, you're an atheist, so you must be bad. And then you wonder, why the fuck so many of us are frustrated with Christianity in general?
And it's impressive. You're a very knowledgeable person.
I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm just pointing out to you how God is defined in the Old Testament.
All right. So to respond to that, I do think there are lots of interesting ways to define God. And that goes back to my
then how do we specify what we're arguing about?
We use context clues, again, it goes back to my example of the Mona Lisa.
I'm defining God as conscience.
Okay. So that's interesting, but then you're kind of expanding the meaning of God.
No, I'm not. That's how it's defined in the Old Testament.
Okay, so
in Elijah and in Jonah.
Sure. So whoever,
it's not whoever. Okay. Elijah is one of the major Old Testament prophets. Right? He's equal in stature to Moses.
Okay.
So it's not arbitrary.
All right. So that is interesting, but it's not relevant to the context with which I am using the term God.
So Gonzaga was saying, if I don't understand where my principles are coming from, but I understand what they are and why they are beneficial to society, it matters, because then we're just relying on hearsay and appeal to authority. What authority are we appealing to? I would argue that religion is the ultimate appeal to authority and the ultimate example of hearsay. We're going from a book from thousands of years ago, from people who wrote it hundreds of or decades after the thing that happened, and saying, well, God did it, therefore. What are we talking about here, bro? Shout out to Gore Frickle. Welcome to the party. I have not interacted with Paul. I would love to. He said, you guys are like brothers from another mother. Hit him up sometime. I have hit him up, but like I always say, guys, it means so much more when the chat or the comments say, oh, check out the Indian Jews, versus me trying to go and be like, hey, do you want to talk to me? Hey, do you want to talk to me? So next time you see him drop a video or a stream, be like, PF John, you got to talk to the Indian Jesus. And that will help a lot. All right, let's back in here.
But it's not relevant to the context with which I am using the term God.
It's directly relevant. Atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. You accept conscience as a guide, and conscience is one of the defining characteristics of God in the Old Testament.
I think you're being intellectually disingenuous.
In what way?
Because again,
I asked you if you believe that conscience guided you.
You just asked me a question and then you stopped me from answering it. In this setting, you understand the way I am using the term God and belief.
Not in the least. I don't understand how you're using it in the least. That's why I'm trying to define it. My definition of God as conscience is a lot more precise and oriented than your definition of
fair. It's more precise than a lot of other definitions. But that's not what people aren't using your definition in common parlance. That's what we're trying to get at. that everybody has a different definition of what God means and what God is for and what the Bible says and all that stuff. And so you all say, oh, it's objective, but then you all look at it subjectively. How does that make any sense?
My definition of God as conscience is a lot more precise and oriented than your definition of the God that you hypothetically disbelieve in.
It's irrelevant to the fault lines of this debate.
How is it irrelevant?
Because in common parlance, when we're talking about atheists, God, belief, not belief,
I don't care about common parlance.
Exactly. You don't care. You just want to be right. You don't care about people understanding these things. You don't care about people acting these things out. You don't care about people believing or not believing these things. You care about being right. Stop trying to win an argument and just have a conversation.
Relevant.
Because in common parlance, when we're talking about atheists, God, belief, not belief,
I don't care about common parlance. I'm trying to get to something fundamental.
I think
I don't at all. I do not have any struggle at all because as I just explained, you don't know what they mean when they say God. We don't know what they mean when they say God unless they define that God. And as an atheist, you're only referring to someone else's belief. So it's not my responsibility to define your belief. And again, if you look, what does God mean to you? Jordan Peterson just said something that's probably very different. Not contradictory, but different.
I think your point is irrelevant to the way that people tend to use these words. Your point that there are these polysemous ideas of God.
Point, you did.
I
made a specific point that God was associated with conscience.
I just feel like you kind of retreat into the semantic fog.
I'm not retreating at all. I'm advancing, sir. You are retreating.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I think in so that goes, the other way around. Then generally, we may not exactly have a clear definition, but we're talking about the thing that Christians believe in. So I stand corrected. You all right, Dondo?
Kind of retreat into the semantic fog.
I'm not retreating at all. I'm advancing, sir. You are retreating.
Right. Well, it was very nice to meet you.
Nice oh, wait. Projection. You are retreating. Now he just ran out of time, brother.
Yeah. It's very brave.
Prompt number 2, guys. Prompt number 2. Well, let's go to our side quest of the poll. Is the Mona Lisa a masterpiece? Oh, 2/3 of you have been swindled. Now let's do a follow-up. Have you seen the Mona Lisa in person? Oh god damn it, caps lock on. All right, I'll just play this, but all right, moving on.
My next claim is that morality and purpose cannot be found within science.
Agreed. Morality and purpose cannot be found within science. That does not mean that you need religion. Morality and purpose cannot be found within science. That does not mean that therefore you must have religion. You just need philosophy.
What is up, Mr. Canada?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
What's your name?
Brian. I think it's interesting that you said that morality and purpose can't be found in science. Actually,
no, within science.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Purpose, I actually grant you, because purpose is subjective, right? Unless you want to boil it down to the purpose of life is just to procreate, right? Sure, whatever. Morality is actually something that we do see. We actually have examples of Neanderthals and older individuals found in the tribe, missing an arm, missing teeth, still alive somehow in his 40s, 50s, right? Typically, you're a Neanderthal, you can't eat, you can't hunt, you die, right? But we know that members of the tribe were taking care of him, right? So we know that at some level, early in our evolutionary history, we actually developed altruism. We have examples of chimpanzees who actually have a basic understanding of fairness, right? If you give...
Now, I wouldn't necessarily have used the word altruism. I would have said empathy, but point stands.
We have examples of chimpanzees who actually have a basic understanding of fairness, right? If you give a chimpanzee 2 grapes, right, and his buddy gets 3, right? He actually freaks out.
Crash out!
But you give both chimps 3 grapes and they're good. We have examples of parrots.
Except for the greedy chimps.
Except for the greedy chimps.
They want 4 grapes.
They want...
Was that a dog whistle? I'm joking.
We have examples of parrots.
Except for the greedy chimps.
Except for the greedy chimps.
They want 4 grapes.
They want 4 grapes. You know, those do exist, right? But we have similar examples where we do animal tests, right? And
so morality is intrinsic.
I think...
So it precedes science.
I think that actually a better way to define it would be that social animals, which we are, right,
yeah,
require some level of morality or...
I didn't know you were black. I'm joking. Shout out to Lessissimo. Welcome to the party. Yes, and unfortunately for many people, humans are, in fact, communal. Indeed. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We also got a Maverick being frank. Said JBP hammered them. I don't know if I completely agree. So let's see where he definitely got in some great points. But I don't know if I would say hammered. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party.
Social animals, which we are, right, require some level of morality or
into what? I'm not disagreeing.
Sure.
Why do they require
Stop
that?
interrupting.
Because it's the only way that social groups can actually survive, right?
That's my point with regards to science. Thank you very much.
Is that
precisely the point that you just made, that science has to exist within a moral framework that isn't in itself scientific.
Right, but that doesn't mean religion. That is the God of the gaps. I don't understand I don't need, maybe not a perfect God of the gaps, but just because it's not science doesn't mean it's religion.
How's it not scientific?
Well, because it's not derived from the scientific process, as you just indicated.
It's derived from the scientific process.
Well,
it's the fact that we are social animals. We need that to exist as a group, right?
Shout out to Jeremiah. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Said Christ is king. Fair enough.
Derived from the scientific process. It's the fact that we are social animals. We need that to exist as a group.
I agree. But
sure.
You pointed to the morality of Neanderthals, to the morality of chimpanzees. They didn't derive that from science.
They don't need to. That's not how that works.
That's my point.
Science explains it. So
no, science doesn't explain morality.
It doesn't explain how social animals would need to be.
Well, that
kind of, but again, not really. What Jordan Peterson is trying to get to with morality and purpose cannot be found within science is to say that it must be found within religion, and that is not the case. That does not follow from the prompt.
That's a complicated question.
But we see it though.
Yeah, but explaining the evolution of morality and explaining morality itself aren't the same thing.
Okay, so you're asking why does it happen?
Yes, that's more accurate.
Because we're social animals.
But there's more to it than that.
Is there?
Sure. For example, so we're moral animals that have a sense of the future.
Sure.
Okay, that makes us unique, and that structures our morality.
No, actually, there are other animals that can predict the future. Or
not really.
No, tigers. Actually, there was a tiger at the SF Zoo that killed somebody. And so
hunting animals
not predict, but plan for the future.
No. Kids threw shit at the tiger. The tiger actually plotted its escape. And it found the kids.
I'm not saying that animals can't think.
Okay.
No, but they can see the future. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
I love this. Make atheism great again. It certainly needs a reformation. Certainly needs a reformation. We need to understand that calling Sky Daddy and stuff is not the way to go. But it is yikes. Hate speech said, hope you get banned in 5K subs. No! Is that what you really think? No!
Put it out by the majority.
Thank you, man.
Good, man. Yeah.
Hey, Jordan Peterson. How you
How
doing?
you doing, man?
My name's Luke. Nice to meet
Good
you.
to see you, Luke.
So your claim that morality and purpose can only be found in science is a little shaky because I think that your claim is really being framed to be morality and purpose can only be found in religion.
Oh, yep. And Maverick's absolutely right that it must be found via philosophical means, but that doesn't necessarily mean religion.
Is that how you're kind of framing it?
I would say that the domain of religion is the domain of morality and purpose. Yes.
Okay.
No, I will not be the leader of any new atheists. No, thank you. No, thank you. There's too many atheists who are firmly entrenched in political ideas that I find more atrocious than the belief with anything with Christianity. So absolutely not. But I hope we get there.
Exactly. And also that science is actually structured, at least in part technically, to eliminate such considerations from its purview a priori.
Okay.
Right? That's why we define science as value free. But that has to be wrong because scientists have to prioritize their attention.
Okay, Maverick says purpose cannot be found outside of God. That is a claim I'm willing to accept. Can you prove that claim?
Value free. But that has to be wrong because scientists have to prioritize their attention towards something before they can even engage in observation.
Okay.
And that act of prioritization of attention is a value predicated act. And so I can continue. There's all sorts of things we have to assume about science before it can take place.
Okay. So what I'm specifically pointing out here is about religion in particular, since you yourself are a Christian, right?
People debate about that, and I generally don't discuss.
You love to just keep it vague because, it helps to not be a Christian when you're not a Christian and helps to be a Christian when you're a Christian.
It publicly.
Okay, I understand that. And me, myself, I am a former...
You absolutely discuss it publicly. You just don't discuss that particular fact because it's convenient for you.
About that, and I generally don't discuss it publicly.
Okay, I understand.
Wonder why.
Me myself, I am a former young Earth creationist fundamentalist.
Oh yeah.
So I have experience.
So yet again, not one single blue-haired yelling atheist about, oh, I hate Sky Daddy because God was mean. That's not the people that we are talking to.
In this, I used to run a TikTok channel directed about apologetics about the Bible, specifically in this type of facet with morality, evolution and such, and going back and forth with that. So in the Bible, it talks a lot about slavery, right?
Yes.
Yes. So in that, it teaches you how to take.
Come on, brother. Come on, brother. We're leaving the slavery argument in 2000. After 2000, we should not be making any arguments about slavery in the Bible. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. Shout out to Richard Hardy. Welcome to the party. So I believe the biggest problem modern atheism face is the optics issue. You are absolutely correct, sir. Absolutely correct. So before Maverick said purpose cannot be found outside of God, and I said, okay, I'm willing to accept that if you can prove it. It says nobody can prove God exists, but we can believe it. Believing it and that God made us for a reason is the only way to get an inherent purpose. If we do not have an inherent purpose, then we cannot have moral obligations. Moral obligations are necessary for morality. So again, I'm willing to accept your claim. You just claimed the claim again. I know what the assertion is. I'm asking for your evidence. I understand that you believe that God is the only way. What I'm asking for is for you to tell me how you know that. John Dale said, I think Jordan Peterson genuinely struggles with faith. His wife says he's closer to believing in God than people think. That makes sense. I don't think that he doesn't struggle. But I do think that he plays up the fact that he is, a fence sitter, that he won't say I am or I'm not. Because you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was born to the Catholic Church. I was confirmed to the Methodist Church, so I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. But I don't think that having doubts makes you not a Christian. So you can say I'm a Christian, but I have my doubts, and I'm working on those, and I'm trying to, figure that out. That doesn't make you not a Christian because you have doubts, right? So then what game are we playing? That's a whole other issue, but yep.
So in the Bible, it talks a lot about slavery, right?
Yes.
Yes. So in that, it teaches you how to take care of a slave. Rather than saying slavery is wrong, I think it should
says
say
that in the story of Moses.
It says slavery is incorrect. It says it's immoral.
That's why Moses leads his people away from slavery.
But
and even from a strictly atheist perspective, it makes sense that the Old Testament would be written to appeal to the people of the time. For so long, I didn't accept that because I was looking at the idea that if God is omniscient and what's the fucking word? The temporal aspect. Like God knows all things that will happen. Then he would know that eventually slavery would be wrong. So he is wrong for putting slavery in the Bible. But I forget exactly who presented it this way. But it's not that God didn't know that slavery was wrong. It was that the people didn't know that slavery was wrong. So God had to meet them halfway in order to get him to listen to their message. How often do we talk about the fact that it doesn't matter if you have the best ideas in the world? If nobody will listen to you, then it doesn't matter. So in the same way that God was like, all right, I mean, eventually, yeah, they're really going to hammer you on this slavery shit. But for right now, just try to do it well. That's the same thing that we're trying to do with moving forward with a secular morality structure. That people are like, no, we definitely can't have that. Be like, all right. It's just kind of like Christianity, but we just don't have the beliefs. Same exact thing.
Moses
says slavery is incorrect. It says it's immoral.
That's why Moses leads his people away from slavery.
But why does the Bible predicate and tell people exactly how to take care of a slave? Isn't that immoral? Wouldn't you say that culturally we've evolved as a species, as he said earlier about empathy?
Yeah, I would say that the reason we evolved, so to speak, away from slavery was because the West was founded on Judeo-Christian morality and the presumption that every person was made in the image of God. And so slavery itself became...
Yeah, guys, we got 23 people here and not even double digits in the likes. Please hit that like button. It is free, it is easy, and it helps out the channel so very much. Thank you.
Immoral, and that was established by Protestant Christians in the UK, who then convinced the UK government for 200 years to go to war on slavery.
And wouldn't you say that this is about the cultural evolution of humans in general, rather than just Christianity?
No, I think it's the flowering of the ideas that were embedded in the biblical texts across long spans of time.
I feel like this is just humans editing based on the cultural evolution.
And what do you mean
morality.
by just?
Just meaning that this was always the direction that humans were heading in the same way, parallel to religion. So they're not causal. It's not a causal thing. It's a parallel thing. We had religion and we had development in cultural evolution. Both of those things happen simultaneously, not one because of the other. That's what he means.
Just?
Yeah, just humans.
Well, humans.
Editing.
Well,
Yeah.
based on culture and history, right? We get better.
Well, they did do it based on culture and history, but
Yes.
culture and history have their foundations too. So
Well, yeah, but we're talking about slavery. So many people bolstered it based on the
everyone,
Bible. Based on the Bible, they looked at it and
much
they
less true.
justified it in the United States and the Deep South. They justified slavery.
Yeah, but
based
the main
on the Bible.
thrust of Protestant thought in particular was stringently
Yes.
against slavery.
So this is why Jordan Peterson is failing again here, because he should be saying what I just said, that of course slavery is wrong. But in the time, if we were to be like, you got to get rid of all your slaves, then nobody would have listened. For better or worse, it is what it is. And the message is so important. That is a reasonable way to explain away instructions for owning and beating human beings. Yikes. The first 3 words. I'm going to be, okay, a maverick. This is a maverick saying slavery, a maverick says, isn't immoral. If a state has no economy and suffers from poverty and people enter it to be able to have food and shelter, that, sir, is not slavery. Shout out to Rhiannon. Welcome to the party. Said first time here. Gotta hear what said first, and then I will like totally fair. Welcome to the party. Let's dive right back in.
Yeah, but the main thrust of Protestant thought in particular was stringently against slavery, and it was about the only movement in the history of the human race that had an anti-slavery direction.
Which was driven by humans and their understanding
that's one
of
way
morality.
of looking. Well, it depends.
It's the same with women's suffrage. I mean, women's in the patriarchy.
What do you mean it was driven by humans? Humans drove slavery too.
Yes, exactly.
So there's no argument there. If slavery and anti-slavery were both driven by humans, what does your claim that they were driven by humans have to do with it?
That religion is irrelevant to the conversation. That's his point.
Evolving morality based on the culture that within the society that they live
in.
So
fine.
with women's suffrage as well is a very similar topic in the Bible. There are denominations in Christianity such as Pentecostal movement, which do bolster women to be pastors, right? Which
I will say there is a direct correlation with the people that I've appreciated, the atheists of here that I've appreciated, and the ones that I haven't. You look for the pattern.
Christians in Christianity, such as Pentecostal movement, which do bolster women to be pastors, right? Which I think that's a great thing to do. But most like to disregard
Where do you
women.
think the idea that human beings were sufficiently equal to all vote and not be slaves came from?
Humans.
Yeah, but so did the idea of slavery.
So did the idea of God.
Fine, but what's your point? Like, you're not making an argument. You're just.
I'm more aligned with Peterson on this one. That it was Christian culture that allowed humans to look at this thing called slavery differently and decide, oh no, under God we are all this. I completely. There's no issue with understanding that, and that is the core of the disconnect between Christianity and atheism. That it doesn't need to be that way. We just don't believe in the thing that you believe in. It doesn't mean that we don't believe in the values that you believe in.
Saying all thoughts come from humans, regardless of the thoughts.
It's not driven by a higher power.
And yeah, that is true, but that also doesn't really mean anything.
Or it's driven on our experiences as humans, which is what is best for all people.
Is it driven by conscience?
So now Ponytail is making the claims that it just comes from our conscience, and what did he say?
Or it's driven on.
It's not driven by a higher power. Okay, how do you know that? How do you know it's not driven by a higher power? Stop making claims of things that you don't know. Stacimo said, getting rid of slavery pre-1730s would be like getting rid of capitalism after 1730. Good luck with that. And again, mea culpa. I definitely did not understand that until recently. I was always looking, well, God knows, so God should just tell them the right thing, and then they would listen to God. But obviously, it doesn't work that way. And why am I not surprised that almost identically, it was to, what was the other poll? The other poll was 2/3. 2/3 of you said that the Mona Lisa was a masterpiece. Yet 75% of you have never fucking seen it. Have you been?
All thoughts come from humans, regardless of the thoughts.
It's not driven by a higher power. It's driven on our experiences as humans.
I mean, he could, but so far he won't.
Which is what is best for all people.
Is it driven by conscience?
It could be. Which conscious is also something that has evolved over time. And I think that's something that does evolve in morality and empathy.
Okay, I don't understand the point that you're making.
My point is that God influenced slavery. People looked at the Bible and went, this is moral because God says so, just like women's suffrage.
There's lots
and just like homosexuality.
All human society.
So again, why is it not why is it not Jordan Peterson's path to explain what I just explained? It took me 15 years of studying this stuff to come across anybody who was explained it that way, instead of making excuses for God.
These were slave owning. So you can't blame that on the Bible.
If humanity decided...
Oh, wait, address that first.
What,
all human societies were slavers. So you can't blame that on the Bible.
Well, you can say it bolstered it.
Well, not if you look at the broad sweep of history, because it was the Protestant Christians
based on their
UK,
interpretation of the Bible.
It was the Protestant Christians,
which evolves over time.
See what happens when you assume.
There, you've been voted out by the majority.
Well, it was great talking with you.
Nice talking to you too.
Okay, that was from yeah. How have you been? All right, prompt number 3, right? Or no, we got voted out. All right.
Gotcha.
Nick said, why do people have such a hard time believing that atheists can have morals? I see believers and non-believers both being morally and immorally both. Religion isn't the difference. I don't know, man. I wish I knew. I just don't know.
Peterson?
Good to see you, man.
Pleasure.
What's your name?
Brian. So the first thing I would like to say is I would like to engage in this discussion in a symbiotic manner. I would not like to engage where there is one clear winner and one clear loser. Emotions are activated and ultimately comes about ego. So I'm just saying I'm really trying to understand your position, and I would just like you to really try to understand my position.
Dilly dilly of that. Whatever conversation you're having, whatever debate you're having, that should be the goal. You should want to understand and explore and have confidence in your own ideas that you don't need to bully people.
Deal.
Okay, sounds good. With that, if you're saying that morality and purpose cannot come from science, is the opposite of that true, that morality and purpose can only come from God?
That's a way of defining it, yes.
Okay.
That's right, that's good.
Exactly. Were you here when I said that? I said, stop trying to win the argument and just have the conversation. You understand? I couldn't watch it on my own because I got frustrated that Jordan Peterson wouldn't actually have a conversation. He's just trying to win this from here. And this is all new to me now. Yeah. And this is, again, the difference between this guy and who Jordan Peterson was in 2017, night and day. John said, I think Christians would say that atheists don't have anything solid to lay their morals on. Correct. And atheists would say, neither do you. You just believe that you do. Well, this guy was probably my favorite atheist out of the bunch. All right. Glomtech is JVP fanboy. So this was his favorite atheist. Let's see where we're going.
Only come from God.
That's a way of defining it, yes.
Okay.
That's right. That's good. So I would say that with regard to the first claim, say atheists don't understand what they're rejecting, because I would say by definition, God is the unity upon which moral claims are based. That's a definition, right?
Okay, if there is a God, what is the purpose of life?
Well, in the Christian tradition, the purpose of life is to engage in voluntary, upward, self-sacrifice so that the kingdom of heaven can be established on earth.
I would have loved to be able to ask you guys to submit an answer to that before Jordan Peterson did, and we would see how different the purpose of life, that all Christians believing the exact same objective thing, how different it would be. Myra said, but that is a fact. Morality can only be present if we agree that we have moral obligations that aren't corrupted by the is-ought issue. Morality can be present if we agree that we have moral, agreed, but we don't necessarily need a God for that. Purpose equals to enhance our spiritual progression. Okay, fair enough. So still waiting on how you determined that purpose cannot be found outside of God, though. So I don't think I forgot about that.
Self-sacrifice so that the kingdom of heaven can be established on earth.
So you're trying to make it to heaven and avoid hell.
Yes, that's a good way of thinking about it.
What is the purpose of heaven? Do you understand?
Well,
so here's the deal.
At
We
minimum,
can get
it's
into
the
an
opposite
infinite.
of endless suffering. How about
We
that?
can, okay, and so should we not try to achieve infinite suffering on planet Earth? And if we can achieve infinite suffering on planet Earth without avoiding it, if we can,
life is not a waiting room.
Do that without God, then does that defeat your claim?
Well, yeah, except that it doesn't, you circumvented my initial definition.
So here, Richard's saying, bring glory unto God would have been the correct reply for a Christian. So seems like we have some disagreement on the purpose of life.
Well, yeah, except that it doesn't, you circumvented my initial definition, because I said that by definition, God was the unified source of morality. And so if
Okay, how do you know that?
we engage in a moral exercise.
When you're talking about morality, though, when you really reverse engineer it and you get it down to its root, you're a psychologist.
Yeah.
It really seems like it just has to deal with motivation. People are saying there is a God.
It's more specific than that.
Well, so let me ask you this. So if there is a God and there is a moral code and it doesn't come at your benefit, are you going to follow it?
It depends on how you define your benefit. If you define,
oh my God, why does it matter? Why does it matter what you define? What mean a good thing for you? This is a place where benefit doesn't matter. The definition of benefit doesn't matter. We're not. It's not going to change if you mean, oh, it is this particular version of good thing for you. This is coming down to divine command theory. If God asked you to do something that you determine is not in your benefit, would you do it? And of course you would.
If it's going to come at your expense, would you still follow it? If God came down and said, here is my moral code and you should follow it, but
again, another claim from Maverick said, for humans to have inherent purpose, it must come from a source outside of us. Okay, I am willing to accept your claims. This is now claim number 3. I understand what you believe. I'm asking why.
Even if you follow it, you are still going to end up in hell. Are you going to follow it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Back that.
Still follow it. If God came down and said, here is my moral code and you should follow it, but even if you follow it, you are still going to end up in hell. Are you going to follow it?
Put a 1 in the chat if you would still follow it. God says you have to do this, but it will land you in hell if you actually do it. But you have to do it. I'm God. Are you going to do that? A logical answer. A logical answer here. And if you say 1, then maybe you need to take a look in the mirror about what you believe and where that is going to get you in life.
Well, that was the question that was put to Job and to Christ.
And that was the story that fucking blew my mind and it made me for sure that I could not believe in Christianity, that a God would do to a human or a believer what God did to Job is basically for a bet because he was being petty with Satan. Nah.
Going to follow it.
Well, that was the question.
How is it a false? Whoa. How is it a false dichotomy? Because yeah, he would if it was, but it's not. False dichotomy is offering 2 choices when there's more than 2 choices. Are you going to do it or are you not going to do it? What's the third option? There's no third option. Either you do it or you don't do it. There's no in between of doing it or not doing it. So it's not a false dichotomy. Eric said, if I could define my benefit as harming others and hoarding wealth if morality isn't objective. Okay, but then we would be like, okay, that's not how people use it. So you could, but then you'd just be talking nonsense. I could call this a microphone. I could call this a flat top griddle. You could do whatever the fuck you want, but if I want people to understand what the fuck I'm talking about, then I need to call this a phone. I need to call this a vape.
That was put to Job and to Christ, right? Because they were required. Hang on, I'm answering your question. They were required to withstand trials that would break anyone and maintain their upward orientation regardless.
And they did that with the motivation of believing that this omnipotent, all-loving God would somehow turn it into a benefit. So they still did it solely for their benefit. So
let's define benefit.
Richard says, as a Christian, you have to do what God says, but God says you're going to hell if you do what he says. Tell me how that's not a false dichotomy, because there's only 2 options. Either you do it or you don't do it. For it to be a false dichotomy, you need to offer the third option. Give me the third option and I'll be like, oh, Richard, you're right. I was wrong. That is a false dichotomy. And yeah, it is a weird hypothetical, but it's logically consistent. What is the third option? So I'm going to start this one. So we're waiting on Maverick to determine how he knows purpose cannot be found outside of God. And we're waiting to determine how Richard, what the third option is that makes this a false dichotomy.
Solely for their benefit. So
no,
when you,
yes, let's define. Yes, hang on. Let's define benefit. Like, if I did something for your sister, would that be to your benefit? Like, how are you defining your benefit? Do you mean one of your whims gratified now? Or do you mean you and everyone you love and know over some reasonable span of time?
So
what do you mean by
when you're talking about whims, I think you're talking about something that's more dopamine. When you're talking about morality, you're talking about something that's more serotonin and more ultimately satisfying. So you and I agree on a lot. I mean, when it comes to talking about how men should be masculine and things of that nature, you and I are 100% in agreement. We just don't agree on the justification that God is the only thing that provides morality.
It's not a justification.
Oh, honey, sweetie baby. Oh, honey, sweetie baby. Why did you do this to yourself? Why would you do this to yourself? A false dichotomy, a logical fallacy where an argument presents only two options as if they are the only possibilities when in reality there are more options available. So yet again, I ask you, what are the other options available? Do it or don't do it. And third option is... What is the third option? I will say, Richard, I was wrong. You were right. Just give me the third option. That's all I'm asking you. Shout out to Tim Forrester in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Dr. Peterson represents himself, not Christianity. I mean, tell him that. Tell him that. Have you heard the good news about masculinity? Love it. Love it. Good one, good one, good one. Welcome to the party. We also got Adam Hansen in the building. Said Jordan Peterson is an actual Christian. He's not a fake Christian like the Trinity Insanity. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We have a lot of different opinions. So let's see how that all comes together. Since you only go to hell if you don't listen to God is the scenario he presents. Do we agree? So you go to hell only if you don't listen to God. No, nobody said only. Well, if you don't listen to God, you may or may not go to hell because you may be fit the parameters. What we're saying is he's commanding you to do a thing. And he's saying, you do this thing, except that I will send you to hell for doing it. Now, you might argue God wouldn't do that, but that's an entirely different conversation. That's why it's a hypothetical. Hypothetically, you can either do it or not do it. You said it's a false dichotomy, which means there are other options available. What is the other option that is available? Just give me the option. What is the option? Do it or don't do it. And what's the third option? Just give me the third option.
It's the definition.
What's the difference then between a definition and a justification? I mean, it's ultimately psychologically the same thing.
Well, we have to define what we're talking about before we can just debate.
Okay, well,
right?
so here's my position.
I said that God, among other things.
I'm actually a non-theist. I'm not an atheist. I believe the human condition is one of uncertainty. And what that means is that I don't believe.
Okay, we've got another claim here. Clearly, you're not going to hell if you listen to God. Okay. And that is based on God can't change his mind. We're all talking about, how the slavery argument is stupid because God can, have things different at different times. So what's clear about it?
Actually a non-theist. I'm not an atheist. I believe the human condition is one of uncertainty. And what that means is that I don't believe that you can conclude there is a God with certainty. And I don't believe that you can conclude that there is a God without in the same position. Now, with that, I don't care. I still wake up every day and I have motivation to be a moral person.
Define moral.
Moral, what I ought to do.
Okay. And how do you?
Yes, Richard. Yes, Richard. The premise is God is trying to set you up for failure. Will you do it? Yes or no? That's the question. Correct.
and what I ought to do. Ultimately, it comes down to what not just benefits me, but what benefits the entire planet, what it benefits the entire system. I think that your entire moral perspective comes from linear thinking. And when you look at the reality of the universe, it's actually more so holistic. So when you look at how Aristotle defined God, when he said that there had to be an unmoved moved or an uncaused cause, he was defining God from a linear perspective. And you do the same with morality, and you do the same with purpose.
How does my definition of morality? How does my definition of morality hypothetically differ from yours?
Because you're saying that there's something that exists in a vacuum, that it exists in.
No, Richard. In this situation, it's a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical. Whether you think it's a BS premise or not, is it logically inconsistent? Is God incapable of telling you, I want you to do this thing, but you will go to hell for it? Is that logically inconsistent? So you're just not willing to answer the question because you know where it leads you.
Because you're saying that there's something that exists in a vacuum, that it exists in and of itself, and nothing in the universe exists in a vacuum. Nothing exists in and of itself. It's a whole systems-based morality. It's a systems-based reality.
Is there a hierarchical structure? Is there a hierarchical structure? Are some things more important than others?
Are some things? I think that some things lead to more benefits than others.
Then, by your own definition, some things are more important than others.
Yes.
Okay. What is
there?
Shout out to Up3. Welcome to the party. Very good to see ya.
You've been voted out by the majority.
All right. I think, is this Parker up next? Oh boy. Oh boy, guys. It's time for the White Dudes for Harris guy to debate Jordan Peterson. If you haven't seen it, it is time to see it. Make sure you are paying attention. Let's fucking go. Same prompt. Morality and purpose cannot be found within science. Parker!
How you doing? Nice to meet you. I guess since you said morality and purpose cannot be found in science, it would just depend on like what you're referencing. If you're saying a description of your psychological preferences would be considered within science, sure. But I don't think that you have to say that it comes from science in order to be like an atheist. As an agnostic atheist, I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that a God exists. And the only ones that I would really reject would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians like prescribe themselves. So I guess
how is that relevant to this claim?
You're basing a position of morality and purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
what typical Christians?
Yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in an all-knowing.
How about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience? He's a major influence on all of Catholic social theory.
So that's what most people, when you say God, that's what most people think of?
About that Christian.
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
Maverick asked a fantastically beautiful question. Why must an atheist or anyone, we'll just think about it. Why must an atheist do anything? For what reason? A theist reasons that God designed us to do what we are. Well, maybe because we want the same type of world, the heaven on earth type of world that you do. Crazy, right? Crazy that atheists don't want to go around killing and raping people. Crazy that atheists want a society that's that flourishes. It's crazy, right?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
Agnostic means you don't know. Atheist means you don't believe, as we've gone over 10 million times before while you've been here.
That's the circular definition. What do you mean when you say you believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true.
Oh, Jordan Peterson. Can we go over this again?
All good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What?
Because if I want it to occur, then I ought to do it so that it occurs.
What do you mean when you say you believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
Most atheists brush their teeth. Does that mean that that atheism means that you must care about dental care? That is an equivalent question here. Atheism is not a movement or an ideology. It is a description. So in the same way, most men are straight. Does that mean that most men don't this, that, whatever? Just because you're a man doesn't mean you're straight. Just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you're a nihilist. Just because you're a nihilist doesn't mean really anything that has to do with this conversation.
You live for it and you die for it. That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Guantek said, is it safe to say that many atheists truly believe in Christian values, but just not a physical God? I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask them. You would have to ask them. That's my point here, is that there's the only unifying thing that of atheism is the lack in the belief of gods. So again, you can say, is it safe to say that many men believe that masculinity is a good thing? And just like, maybe, but you'd have to ask each individual man. Just being a man doesn't necessarily dictate your opinions on masculinity any more than atheism dictates your opinions on Christian values. Does that make sense? Just because you are a man, it does not dictate what you believe about masculinity. Clearly. Just because you're a man, it doesn't dictate your beliefs about masculinity. Just because you're an atheist doesn't mean it dictates your beliefs about Christian values.
Gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really.
Oh yeah, we got to go over this part again. So yeah, he asked, what is it?
Opposition of your additional business, and you die for it on it.
I said you think it to be true.
Okay, so that was Parker's definition of belief. You think it to be true.
All right. So if you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
Do you believe that I've already rolled up my my 3 joints for when I go to sleep? Put a 1 in the chat if you believe that I've done that. Because I could have not. If you believe something, Jordan Peterson says that you must stake your life on it. So Maverick said he believes it. Would you stake your life on it? Guantek, would you stake your life on the fact that I've rolled up? That's not what believe means.
All right. So if you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it. That's what I.
Okay. So again, are you willing to stake your life? And if you're saying no, you wouldn't, then you don't believe it. But you do believe it. So obviously that's not the definition.
I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Shout out to Elijah Flyer over on Rumble, said atheists are gay AF. Most of them are pretty gay. I'll give you that. I'm the cool one, but most of them are shitty. We also got equality and deference because vagina. Welcome to the party. It said liked and shared, guys. Thank you so very, very much. You know how much that stuff really does help the channel, and especially sharing the video. It doesn't even matter if you think anybody's going to click on the link. Just by you telling YouTube, I want other people to see this, they will show it to other people. Thank you so very, very much. Well, I said Jordan took some time off from sobbing uncontrollably to do this. My Rumble crew. Welcome to the party. We also got Dylan Sue. Welcome to the party. Very good to see you. Welcome. Let's dive right back.
Gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
All right, I'll send you the link.
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
how would you define belief? Something you say?
Okay, so I explain. Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life.
Don't be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I mean,
hey, dilly to that. That was pretty badass. That was pretty badass. Love him or hate him. That was
It is the case that this pen exists. But if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life.
Don't be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Would you lie to like save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
I'll give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them,
example.
would you lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable.
Hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like that.
Oh, you were doing so good. You were doing so good. You were doing so good. Yes, you're correct that if you're in the, you start in the position of lying and excusing lying, then it could be bad and da 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 da. And then just answer the hypothetical. Just answer the hypothetical question. No, I wouldn't lie because this, or yes, I would lie because of that. Just answer the hypothetical. No, that's not what God would do. That's why it's a hypothetical.
It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable.
Hypotheticals?
Yep.
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like that because it's far. Look, don't play games.
I'm not playing games.
Yes, you are. If you present me with an intractable...
Shout out to Equality. It said silly to Jordan, but he has said everyone lies. Indeed.
Moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing game. I just told you I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Okay, what does that have to do with the fact that if, hypothetically, you were in that position?
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect people that you care about, like there could be a Jewish friend that you have and you want to protect them.
I think you should just give up on that line of questioning.
Give up on just like trying to clarify your position? Because you don't like, are you like uncomfortable with me asking this question? It's just a basic hypothetical. Like I could ask you.
It's just a basic hypothetical where you put Jews' lives at stake and not.
Maverick said he should have answered the hypothetical, saying he would lie and that he is lying because he believes that doing so would save the innocent's life more than he believes the benefit of telling the truth. That would be a good answer. But it doesn't seem like he thought of that.
Germany. That's just a basic hypothetical.
Obviously, you would lie in that scenario to save their life, but you're like not trying to answer this question for some reason.
I just told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Let's say you're anti-fascist.
Why are you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're.
Parker, what are you doing? I hate this kid so much. Do you guys understand? Do you guys understand the frustration that I hate most atheists more than you could ever imagine? Because this gets flung onto me. This gets flung onto me just because we both happen to not believe in a truth claim. There is nothing else. I was going to say both that were men. I don't know. He's kind of a boy. But other than being male and atheist, there is nothing that I have in common with this fruitcake. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing.
Like, so you're
Why
anti-fascist?
are you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're not answering this hypothetical because you know it shows that you clearly would lie to save
I'm
someone's life.
answering it in
Obviously,
a manner
that's not
you
what truth
don't
is.
find acceptable.
Yep, atheists are guilty of everything. What?
Because I care about truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously, right? Logically, because that's already happened. Like that's in the past. You don't have a time travel device. We're bringing this logical hypothetical up to show you that in some circumstances that do happen within the real world, you would lie to save people's lives. So your
Come on, stop making me agree with Parker.
definition of truth isn't actually how we're typically using it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters when I ask you, like, do you believe this? Do you think this to be true? So you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really like want to be associated with
I can
Christianity.
imagine that I was in a situation where the best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage. But that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
Fair. That's the answer to your question. Yes, if I had done that, then in that situation I would lie, but I wouldn't be in that situation because I wouldn't lie to begin with. That's a totally fine answer. Just answer the question. Rhiannon said, Jordan Peterson has gotten stuck in the image he's created for himself. He couldn't say that lying would be okay under any circumstances because he thinks it would contradict himself. He is a Jungian and big no-no. Big no-no. Quality said, we atheists have a fucking Parker Paleface here, and Christians have Hitler. I missed your dilly dilly before, so I'll give you a dilly dilly for that. All right. Now, Morty, that means he needs food, guys. We have not one single super chat, guys. Feed the dog. He is dying of starvation, please.
Likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you lied in that scenario. So
not without the context that I put it in.
But we weren't asking without the context. We are asking with the context. The answer is yes with that context.
We're not willing to die for it. We're not willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then, seemingly.
You're doing exactly what I said you were doing at the beginning of the conversation. You're generating an impossible, restricted, hypothetical with no precursors to back me into a corner.
How is it possible? Is there something contradictory about it? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Same thing with if God told you to do something that would send you to hell. There's not anything logically inconsistent. Yes, it may not make sense in the real world and in your belief system, but that's not the point of the question. The point of the question is, if this were true, then how would you apply your principles to this truth that doesn't exist in our reality?
Yeah. My next claim is that everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it.
I'm going to skip this one because I think that's kind of obvious. I think we all agree with that. Oh, is this the one? All right, Devin said this one's good, so we'll keep it rolling.
Hi.
Good work.
Thank you.
Hi there.
I'm Zena. So I want to start off with defining terms. How do you define worship?
Prioritize.
So almost like having a preference over something.
See, I would say that is a very weak definition of worship. That I prioritize. I prioritize Morty over I prioritize this show, but I don't know that I would say I'd worship Morty. I love Morty, but do I worship Morty? And so this is what we talk about. We're talking about semantic obfuscation. Get your own notebook or mug or whatever, and all of these different things over at TheIndianJesus.com. We hate semantic obfuscation, using words and twisting the definition to make it convenient for you, even though that may not be exactly how you use the word.
How do you define worship?
Prioritize.
So almost like having a preference over something rather than the other.
It's a hierarchy of preferences. Yeah. And you use it to direct your attention.
Right.
So whatever you're attending to, you're worshiping.
Right. So I've kind of become a little bit familiar with your idea of like this value-laden hierarchy. Yeah. Right. And you kind of posit that at the bottom of this hierarchy, or you call it top or bottom, I suppose. Right. At the bottom of this hierarchy, this foundational priority in your life is going to be considered God. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. I'm trying to imagine a situation in which could there be that someone has a priority at their foundation that is different from someone else's?
Oh, definitely.
Right. So we can have different conceptions of God.
That's why we fight.
Right. So essentially, there is no.
Yet it's objective.
There's not one God, but there are multiple gods, and these gods exist in some realm of truth. It's true that this person has one God and it exists.
Yeah, probably better to think about it as multiple values, but that there's a hierarchy of values with something at the bottom.
Right, but at the bottom is God, and
that's a definition. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the bottom is God, and there can be multiple people with different conceptions of God, and they're each valid in being called God. So there are multiple gods that exist.
It depends on what you mean by valid. So far, so good, but it depends on what you mean by valid, because I would say that some foundational conceptions don't play out when they're implemented. So if you put the wrong thing at the foundation, you end up in hell, for example. That's what happens in totalitarian states.
Okay.
Yeah?
So you're saying...
So they're not all equal. Like all foundational principles are not equal, even though they might be equally foundational. Right.
So what makes one kind of foundational tenet like better than another one?
That's an excellent question. Iterability. Imagine that you play a game with someone and you're a kid, and it's fun. So then you play again and again and again.
So repetition.
It's
Devon, I think you just thought she was hot. This is not interesting at all. I'm gonna move to our next prompt, or our next person. So everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it. And I agree with that.
There, we've been voted out by the majority.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Really, very thoughtful.
Hey, Dr. Peterson.
How you doing?
Danny, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Danny.
Danny.
You're saying atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay. Do Catholics attend to Mary?
Yes.
Okay. So do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back.
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within
There's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to.
Attend
to. I thought it was prioritize.
Do
prioritize.
Do Catholics
sacrifice for?
What do Catholics?
So now we're adding on to it. Okay.
Attend to. Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to my definition.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend.
So you can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
So you can worship something casually. Like I worship it, but like not really like that much. Do we see the semantic obfuscation? Worship means kind of just maybe weekly. No, that's not how anybody uses the word worship. Come on, man.
And now you're adding stuff to the definition, but your original definition.
I added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay. You're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
How do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't.
Oh my God! You don't know where you are right. Hey, you got him. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to say.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either.
How dare you? Don't be a smartass. This is going downhill. Welcome, Ed Fordshire. I agree. This line of questioning is pretty gay.
You're a Christian
I won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
I don't have to tell you. I do have a girlfriend. She just goes to a different school.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I was invited.
No. That's not how these work. That's not how these work. Jordan Peterson is the one who decides what the prompts are. It's everybody else who doesn't know what the topic is until it's read.
To talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something. You are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
I'm done with him.
Shit! Yikes, bro. Yikes. Shout out to Kelly Green. Welcome to the party. Said it, it's easily able to be articulated that Catholics don't worship Mary, not if you define worship as prioritize. You're absolutely correct. It is very easy to articulate that Catholics don't worship Mary. But if you first define worship as prioritize, and then you say that Catholics don't prioritize Mary, or you can prioritize weekly, and worship is not a very strong thing necessarily. Come on, man. Come on. All right, let's move on. I think we got our boy Guamtech coming in a minute. All right, same prompt. Everybody worships something, even though they might not know it.
There.
Hi, nice
What's
to
your
meet you.
name?
Gerard.
Hello, Gerard.
Nice to meet you, sir. So you've said that worship is when you prioritize and sacrifice for something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a hierarchy in there.
Sure. So
all right, we'll start this one over. We got our boy Guamtech, the resident JVP fan. Love it. Welcome to the party. So before we jump into this guy, sounds like you got a lot to say already. So I'll give you the floor.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that we're going to be able to kind of just like do a double viewing of what some of JBP is talking about here and the atheists and what they have to say and stuff, just because I feel like I can give a little bit more context into what JBP is talking more about, since I have looked into a lot more of his stuff than probably a lot of people on the channel. So I'm hoping that I can provide a little bit more value here. I'm not here to necessarily say that, you know, you're completely wrong in your criticisms of him. I'm just trying to help people understand where he's coming from a little bit better.
And that's totally fair. And I do think that, you know, what he's trying to get at has value. But the problem is that he needs someone like you to, you know, translate it into normal person speak. And, you know, it's not the same thing as saying, like, dumb it down. It's just like he talks about it in a way that's not easily understood.
Right, and I've said it before that I do think that JBP has gone a little bit too academic with what he's trying to do, whereas 2017 JBP, like you were saying, he was a lot more, I guess, just able to be, you know, understood by the everyman. You know, he didn't have to go into such detail and have to use the memes of what do you mean by believe and stuff like that. But I do have something to say about that.
Okay.
So as far as like when he's saying like, what do you mean by believe? Obviously what he's trying to do is break down exactly what people mean by believe. So that is when it comes to God, it's kind of like asking the question, do you believe in the historical accuracy of God? Do you believe in the physical God? Do you believe in the morals of what God has given you? You know, like there are many different aspects of believe in this. And I think that's what he's trying to do when he asks that question. It isn't necessarily where he's trying to just give you a question where it's just like, oh, good luck with this one. He's trying to narrow down, like, what part of this are you asking me what I believe in?
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think you said it in the beginning that, you know, basically the undergirding of what he's saying has value, but he's not very good at you know, putting it out there. And yeah, I understand. I like a lot of what he says, but this debate just annoyed me in the beginning for previously stated reasons. Totally agree with what you just said. So word up. All right, so let's jump back into this with this this guy here. Again, the prompt is everybody worships something, even though they might not know it.
There. Hi.
Your name?
Gerard.
Hello,
Gerard.
Nice to meet you, sir. So you've said
And
that
well, if you want me to pause, just let me just say pause.
Yeah.
worship is when you prioritize and sacrifice for something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a hierarchy in there.
Sure. So I prioritize and sacrifice for my wife more than I would prioritize and sacrifice for a random person on the street, right?
Probably. Yeah.
Presumably. Do I worship
I don't know.
my
I've
wife?
seen some pretty bad marriages.
Assuming a good marriage, are you saying I worship my wife?
I'm trying to define worship.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So prioritize and sacrifice.
The higher it is in the hierarchy, the more what you're doing is akin to worship. But even in your trivial acts of attention, you're prioritizing and partaking in worship, even if you don't know it.
So I am.
And it's partly, well, with regard to your wife, say. So why do you value your wife? You do value your wife.
I love her. So I prioritize and I sacrifice for her.
Right. So that's within the confines of love, let's say.
Sure.
What else does it serve?
What else does what serve?
Your love and your marriage.
I mean, I'm married to my wife because I love her. That's also why I prioritize and sacrifice for her.
Right.
I certainly wouldn't think I worship her, and I don't think anyone else would make that.
I'm
Are you
trying to
making
make
that
it
claim?
Right. And so that's the issue with the definition, just like, well, that too. But as Kelly Green said earlier, it's very easily articulated. But if you corner yourself into a box, then you're the one that defined worship as prioritized and then said, well, there's different levels and da-da-da-da-da. So if you're worshiping something weakly, not weak, if you're worshiping something in a weak way, is that even worship? I would say no.
And I guess where I would kind of go with this is that he's trying to break down the hierarchy of what you believe and whatnot. And even though maybe your worship of your wife is lower on that hierarchy than what could be, you know, it's still not necessarily saying that you don't worship her.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like you can make it fit, but it's just it begs the question. Well, then why use the word worship in the first place? There doesn't that weaken the reverence you have for Christ if you're a Christian? If you're saying I worship Christ, but also I worship my dog and I worship my favorite hat and I worship my car and I worship my wife and I worship my nice clean lawn and you know the carpet's got to have the lines in it. Like then what the fuck does worship even mean?
So I guess then from the JBP standpoint is that all of those end up going in a hierarchical order to the point of actually worshiping God. It's all encompassed in worshiping God. And maybe you don't get all the way to the top of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not worshiping something along the way.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I'll leave on an equality and deference quote, quoting Jordan Peterson from Rules of Life. Be clear. This is one of the rules. Be clear in your speech. Not really doing so.
Also why I prioritize and sacrifice for her. Right. I certainly wouldn't think I worship her, and I don't think anyone else would make that.
I'm
Are you
trying to
making
make
that
a
claim?
definition.
Okay.
Yeah, that there's a hierarchy of attentional priority, and as you move up it or down it, depending on whether you think about it as a pinnacle or a foundation, you move more towards worship. Right. Okay. So even the small things. I'll give you an example. Imagine you go on a date.
Kelly's saying, I think part of what he's saying could be seen as adoration. I don't believe that adoration and worship are the same thing either. I can endure something or revere it. Yeah, and again, hitting on exactly why the Jordan having his own dictionary does not help his cause.
Yeah, I don't think I have a issue with that. So it's basically just the wrong word being used.
Yet again, our boy JBP.
Well, imagine that your aim is a long-term relationship like a marriage. Okay, now imagine that your aim is short-term sexual gratification. Your pattern of attention is going to vary during the date, depend on your ultimate end.
Yeah, Maverick, I don't hate this definition.
That's the hierarchy. The way that you attend to your wife is dependent on your ultimate aims, even if you don't know it.
So at what point is it worship? Because it sounds like you're saying worship is almost a spectrum, right? Or it's not a binary, it's not a...
It's kind of like, that's a good question.
When is it worship as opposed to just, I love my wife?
The closer you get to the top or the bottom, the more it's more like
how
worship.
Close to the top? Because I don't think I worship.
That's kind of begging the question. Well, the closer you get to the top is the more, yeah, that's what we're asking about, bro.
Worship anything. And if you're saying I have to hit a certain threshold for it to be worship, it is possible I don't worship anything then, right?
It's not possible that you don't worship anything.
What do I worship?
Because you wouldn't attend. Well, love.
So you think I worship love?
Do you attend in consequence of love? I'm trying to define something. What do you mean worship? Well, I told you what I meant. What do you mean?
Right. You told us what you meant, but then it doesn't fit with how other people use that word. And so you're like, well, how come what you're saying doesn't make sense? You're using the word that the way everybody else uses it. I defined it. So therefore we should all understand what I mean. That's not how it works. Nick here says, I don't believe it's moral to do or not do something because you're either trying to earn the reward of heaven or avoid the punishment of hell. Do it because you believe it is right, not for someone else. Well said. Anything to add here? Go on, take that. This worship word, he's obfuscating. He's obfuscating.
Maybe, but I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing that he is asking the person what he means by worship, because, I mean, I guess it does start to become subjective at some point, right? So, I mean, the entire conversation has, been hinging on the fact that Jordan Peterson keeps on explaining what he believes, but nobody else is explaining what they believe.
Fair, but he's taking the position, and again, they changed the title. So this was about Christianity. He's coming from the objective standpoint that this is truth, this is what it is, this is what we all believe. And we're the ones saying, no, I don't think so. And so he's in the position to defend the true objective thing. We as atheists, if we are moving around, that we don't have a belief in this thing. We're not tied to these words. We're not tied to these ideals. But you are not you person, but you are if you're at least representing them in this way.
Right. So he explained that, and he's putting it out there for them to try to understand that. But obviously they're not playing into it at all. So now he's trying to open the conversation to be able to understand then what do you mean? So that way maybe I can help this fit a little bit better.
That's fair. And if that was if he had done that in a less smug way, I would not have an issue with it. What do you mean? I give you my definition. Like, come on, bro.
See, I'm trying to define something. What do you mean worship? Well, I told you what I meant. What do you mean?
So I mean, something you worship is something that you have a reverential view for in a manner in which you believe it to be above and beyond normal things you like.
Real quick, Guam Tech, are you on Wi-Fi? Your audio is a little scratchy.
Like you
so do you have that attitude towards your wife?
I have that.
Do you privilege her compared to other women?
Of course, I privilege her compared to other women, but I don't worship her. Nor does she worship me.
By the definition you just offered, yes, you do, because you just offered a definition that involved prioritization and elevation.
Okay, fine. Then I worship my wife, but worship now is a much weaker word. It now it loses value. It loses value.
But it wasn't Jordan Peterson's, need to devalue the word of worship. It was the atheist who gave him his definition. So he still is working within the atheist definition.
I think that fits his definition as well, though. And in both cases, it weakens the word. So fine. So again, fine. If you're saying the atheist is using the word worship in a way that weakens what is the reference for Jesus Christ to a Christian, I'm not going to disagree with you. But if you're representing Christianity and you're using worship in a way that weakens the reverence for Jesus Christ for a Christian.
But he didn't say worship Christianity. He said worship something.
And again, I agree with that fact. But that's why we're like so far off the reservation that like we're not talking about whether we have whether or not we prioritize things. Obviously,
the one thing that I can't say about this is that yes, there is kind of a word game being played here, right? Like there is a little bit of some semantic obfuscation and stuff, but you can only work within such certain bounds when you're talking to people who are just unwilling to I guess have the conversation on your terms. So I mean, maybe if he were more clear about what he believed and was putting it, out there for everybody else to believe, then yeah, he would be putting himself in a box. The only problem that I have with that is that yes, his words that he uses are so all-encompassing, they can mean anything. But that's also part of why I like JBP, is because in a way,
he always gets to
really
win because he can just wiggle his way into a victory no matter what, because he can obfuscate the semantics. I mean, hey, it definitely is a skill. So if that's the skill that you're worshiping, then I think you're worshiping the right thing. All right, back in.
Offered, yes, you do.
I want to hear his exact definition again.
So I mean, something you worship is something that you have a reverential view for in a manner in which you believe it to be above and beyond normal things you like. Like you. So
do you have that attitude towards your wife?
I have that.
Do you privilege her compared to other women?
Of course, I privilege her compared to other women, but I don't worship her. Nor does she worship me.
By the definition you just offered, yes, you do, because you just offered a definition that involved prioritization and elevation.
Well, so I think they're just both wrong, in that those are both bad definitions for worship. So Guamtech is correct. That wait. Bruh.
I sure am, baby. I sure am.
Dilly to Guam and Guamtech. Dilly. Love it. Good catch, Ty.
Yes, you do, because you just offered a definition that involved prioritization and elevation.
Well, and thinking that she is divine above and beyond what a normal natural phenomenon can be. Not other women, no, beyond any human being could ever be.
You're right. I did miss that part where he gave a bad definition.
Will prioritize her over
any
other
making
human,
the assumption
that she is.
You're making the assumption.
So I'm surprised we don't have a bunch of flags, because he just did exactly what Jordan Peterson did by defining himself into a corner.
Man, the flag thing, in my opinion, is the dumbest thing for Jubilee. There are parts sometimes when they raise a flag. Like, I think you'll actually see it in this. One person raises a flag, then you watch two people look over and they raise their flag. Like it's either like a social thing, or it's like you don't know if they're doing it because now I just want to get in. I want to be able to say my piece, so I'm going to get him out of there, or whatever.
Or he's cooking. Let's not let him cook and get the other guy there. Yeah, I completely agree. When again, Uncensored America said our debate with Andrew Wilson and Rachel Wilson is on the release schedule. It was over the summer, but and it hasn't come out. I told you I wasn't lying about it. But anyway, when they asked about doing that, if you haven't heard, at DebateCon, Modern Day Debate had a DebateCon, and part of that was a 4v1 Atheists versus Andrew Wilson, and then Rachel Wilson came in, and we did a bunch of stuff there. And I was just like, as long as we're not running to the chair, so we didn't have to run to the chair, and we didn't have to use the flag. So everybody just got 5 minutes. It was a much better thing.
I actually saw a really good comment for Jubilee, which is for the chair thing. They should have the people cycle like 2 or 3 chairs every single time there's a new prompt. So that way people are closer to the chair, you know, rather than being like further away from it, being behind JVP. Or even a button.
Like, why are we running? We're adults. I'm not running for shit. All right, Dan Megan.
Prioritize her over
See,
any
you're
other
making
human, but I
the
don't
assumption
think that she is some
you're making the
supernatural
assumption that only the thing at the top or the bottom has anything to do with worship. And I'm saying that's not true. It's a hierarchy of prioritization. And there's either something at the top or the bottom, depending on the metaphor, or you're fragmented and confused. Those are the only options.
So let's say
I agree with that. I mean, I think we could easily say that is a piece that your average atheist is missing, that because they don't worship God, they think that they don't worship at all. I can totally get with that, you know, whether they worship the state or whatever the fuck else it is. I don't worship Taylor
Swift. In your
Swift.
case, personal freedom, the American way.
There you go. There's always something, and that's not necessarily a problem.
Going in many directions,
Okay.
or you're going in one direction.
So let's suppose I'm fragmented and confused. Then you agree I don't worship anything.
No, then you'd worship multiple things.
So what's the threshold when it's worship? Right? I prioritize a lot of stuff.
I said that the closer you get to the pinnacle, or the closer
How close?
you get.
Can you give me some sort of metric? How close?
Begging the question again. Closer you get to the top. We don't know what that means. That's what we're asking about.
So I got to get to this pinnacle.
Do you know the difference between cheap literature and deep literature?
Yes.
Okay, that's the same issue. And how do you distinguish between them? What's the difference between cheap and deep?
I mean, it's really an opinion-based thing, right?
Is it? So it's just an opinion that Dostoevsky is better than a porno magazine.
Well, I've spoken to people.
I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
Who think to kill a mockingbird? One of my favorite books. So I mean, people will differ on.
Well,
opinions.
just because people are stupid about things doesn't mean that their opinion is valid.
That's certainly true.
I mean, that's true. But
okay, well, do you think
that's true? But you can't make that argument that people disagree, therefore they must be stupid. Come on, man. Weak shit.
Well, I mean, when it comes to something as like, you know, assessed and understood as like actual literature. Man, I just fucking blanked for a second there. Literature, you know, I think that you can make that claim. You know, this is why, like, when somebody is talking about the Bible and whatnot, and they're just saying like, well, there's not really anything that you could say. It's just, you know, a man in the sky said it, so therefore we have to believe in it. And it's like, yeah, except for the fact that we've had so many people throughout history actually look at this and try to break it down. You know, it isn't just based off of book says do. Right. You know, like there is context to it.
Right, and you crazy. And I think that is a big thing that atheists need to like put their guard down and just like, okay, we're not in the place where Christians are trying to force, you know, you to be Christian and like in the same way you wanted them to let us live. Now you fucking let them live. Just let them live. Let them live. You know, I mean, again, I understand. I'm not saying it's reasonable, but I do understand if you're like an LGBTQIA plus whatever, and Christianity is in direct conflict with that. Okay, fine. That makes I can see why you would have different opinions. But if you're a normal person, then like, what's the problem? Also, I don't like the dichotomy of subjective and objective. There should be a third category. I completely agree, but unfortunately, everything is subjective, except
what is so objectively subjective that you could have a third category. Yeah,
exactly.
Real quick, I'm gonna turn off my camera very quickly just to let my dog out, but I'm still gonna be on here and I can still hear everything, and I'm still gonna chime in.
What up?
All right,
I'm back in.
About things doesn't mean that their opinion is valid.
That's certainly true. I agree with that.
Okay, well, do you think there is a hierarchy in literary quality?
I think that there is a hierarchy to an extent in literary quality, but I think once you get to a certain threshold, it is just opinion. Like, I agree. Dostoevsky is better than a porno mag, but is F. Scott Fitzgerald better than Ernest Hemingway? I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Why do you think that?
Because of what a book is, what literature is. Dostoevsky, he follows what literature is the purpose of more than the porno magazine.
Okay, good.
So it's about purpose and
so let me,
definitions.
yeah, sure. Let me give you an analog then.
Okay.
The depth of worship is analogous to depth of literary significance. And the closer you get to what's deep, the more religious and worshipful your practice.
So
and maybe you don't know what's at the bottom, but something needs to be, or you're confused.
Well, so
that I can agree with. Totally fair.
Use your analogy, then how deep do I have to go for it to be worship? Do I have to be Catcher in the Rye? Do I have to be War and Peace?
Ooh,
depends on what.
Great question. So we're using the analogy of what is better literature to compare to what is closer to worship. And so the question then is if how deep in literature would be the analog to how deep I have to go in prioritization before it counts as worship. Great question.
Your practice.
So
and maybe you don't know what's at the bottom, but something needs to be, or you're confused.
Well, so to use your analogy, then how deep do I have to go for it to be worship? Do I have to be Catcher in the Rye? Do I have to be War and Peace? Or
depends on what you're seeking for.
Just the rules of the universe. Everything else is subjective.
I'm seeking to know whether I worship something. You've claimed I worship something, and
If you want to have a deep and meaningful life, then you have to go all the way to the bottom or the top. And insofar as you're capable of doing that, because otherwise you'll be fragmented and miserable and anxiety-ridden and hopeless.
So I have to worship something to have a meaningful life. And if
There's no difference between those two things.
Okay.
They're the same.
There's no difference between those things. So wait.
I have to worship something to have a meaningful life.
So worshiping something is the same thing as having a meaningful life, according to Jordan Peterson, as he just said. So if I worship the state, that is a meaningful life.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you're doing the thing that you would die for, and you're doing it well, and even coming out on top because of it, then yeah, I would say that's meaningful. It's a pretty shit life, but at least that person is they're getting meaning out of it.
Okay, fair enough. If that does track.
Fragmented and miserable and anxiety-ridden and hopeless.
So I have to worship something to have a meaningful life. And if
There's no difference between those two things.
Okay.
They're the same thing.
So if I don't worship anything, my life will not be meaningful, correct?
Well, that's the definition of nihilism.
Okay. So if I'm a nihilist, I don't worship anything.
That's true. And then you...
okay. You just said everybody worships something. I think you just agreed there is a class of people that doesn't.
Well...
That one I'll give it.
I mean, come on, bro. Come on. Everybody worships something, but if you're a nihilist, you worship nothing. There's a bunch of nihilists. I mean, you could call me a nihilist. I don't think I am, but a lot of people think that, as we've seen, that every atheist is a nihilist. So if you are an atheist and you are that makes you a nihilist, then you don't worship anything. So come on, bro. What?
So maybe, okay. Because he did say all atheists believe in something, not all people.
No, the claim here, everybody worships something, even though they might not know it.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I got that wrong.
He fucked up. So even the brothers Karam, I don't know what this is. Almost
Karamazov.
Karamazov. I'm not very well read. Sorry, guys. Oh man, come on, Jordan.
Okay.
Definition of nihilism.
Okay. So if I'm a nihilist, I don't worship anything.
That's true. And then you...
okay. You just said everybody worships something. I think you just agreed there is a class of people that doesn't.
Well, they're incoherent in their worship, and hand gestures like that aren't going to help.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, if you're incoherent and fragmented and aimless, which is what happens if your objects of worship are unstructured and chaotic.
So I would agree more with Maverick that a nihilist worships personal pleasure, or rather doesn't have in Jordan Peterson's definition, where you don't have a single worship. I think that fits, but then you can't say that everybody worships something and then say that nihilists, bad prompt. This is exactly the same as when what's his face, Andrew Wilson. One of the prompts was degeneracy should not be promoted. I'm like, wait a minute. So all you're saying is bad things should not be promoted. You're not saying what is or is not degeneracy. You're just saying that which is degenerate should not be promoted. Like no shit. That's not profound in any way, shape, or form. We want to promote good things. That's not a Christian thing. That's just a human thing.
Then you're going to be anxiety-ridden and without hope. That happens. That's a technical argument.
But there's happy nihilists.
Oh, there are.
How do you explain that there are happy nihilists then? Just that they
The
can't
mere
be.
fact you state like what
Wait, come on. But we said before, he said before, or at least you said, Guamtag, that if somebody is worshiping the state, then even though that's a miserable life, that is the meaning to their life. So now he's going back on that. Let's see where he goes, and then I want to hear your thoughts.
It's a technical argument.
But there's happy nihilists.
Oh, there are.
How do you explain that there are happy nihilists then? Because
Well,
you just said they
the
can't
mere
be.
fact that you state that there are happy nihilists doesn't make it true. Like, what's your evidence? That how do you measure nihilism, and how have you associated it with happiness, and what's your definition of happiness, and have you compared them to religious people? Because if you do, by the way, it's clearly the case that religious people, over the long run, have better mental health.
Yeah,
So
that's irrelevant. Unless you're claiming that there is no such thing as a nihilist who is happy, then that's irrelevant.
well documented fact in
Going to with what you said, again, we talked about someone who worships the state. I mean, in that case, they're not a nihilist. So they do still have something to worship. It's just something shitty.
Right, but we're now we've agreed on that and say, okay, this person's not a nihilist because they worship the state. But then Jordan Peterson has agreed that nihilists do exist, unless we're claiming that every single nihilist is unhappy or at least not happy. Then I don't know. You would have to do some work on that, and then the comparison to whether nihilists are happier than religious people is not relevant to whether or not you can lack worship, according to Jordan Peterson, and be happy.
And maybe this is something that, because you've mentioned nihilism before in a different manner than what I'm used to. When I think nihilist, I think like Joker. From like Batman, whatever the Batman movie was that he's in. Dark Knight. Yeah, Jesus, I don't know why I'm blanking so much on shit I should be on top of. But anyway, Dark Knight, that's what I think of when I think nihilist. Someone who literally is just there to burn it all down and doesn't have a care for anything. So maybe under my definition, that kind of works a little bit better. But I know of other, nihilistic beliefs where it doesn't fall under that.
Right. And so in the same way that being an atheist can be, blue-haired, feminist, whatever, militant, all that, it can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. In the same way that nihilism can manifest as being the Joker and not caring about anything and when it also can manifest in the notion that, oh, okay, I'm on this earth and there is no purpose to anything. Nothing means anything, but I'm here anyway. So I may as well have a good time. And if I have a good time at other people's expense, then it's not going to lead to more good times for me. So if I try to just make good times and also cater to other people's good times, then we're all going to have good times, even though I don't think any of this matters. So it can manifest as the Joker, or it can manifest as the opposite, in the same way that you can be an atheist and you can be amazing like me, or you can be an atheist like the average atheist that on the streets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the two different kinds of nihilism that we've gone over before, of like, there's the nihilists that don't care, and then there's the nihilists that say, if nothing matters, then why not?
Right. Exactly. And I do absolutely acknowledge that for those Joker style atheist, nihilist, whatever, Joker style people, that they would be better off if they had religion. We all would be better off if they were Christians. I full stop.
Something to bolster them, in reality.
But the fact that if the Joker was a pious Christian, society would be better. That fact does not mean that God exists. That fact does not mean that other nihilists, other atheists cannot exist and not be the Joker. Bane was more psychopathy, less nihilism. You got it.
I agree with that.
Great point. All right, have him back in.
It's clearly the case that religious people over the long run have better mental health. It's a well-documented fact in psychological literature.
Sure.
So you're
I
claiming...
missed this from Maverick. So having a purpose and then going on to fulfill it is where true happiness lays. Agreed. But a nihilist doesn't have to, but a nihilist can say that I'm going to determine my own purpose and I'm going to fulfill that purpose. And that is where true happiness comes from. My purpose is to bring the message that you don't have to believe in a God to be a good person. That is my purpose, and I find happiness and feel fulfilled when I do that.
It's just a claim. It doesn't stand on anything.
So you disagree with the claim that there exists even one happy nihilist?
I didn't say that.
Okay, would you agree there exists at least one happy nihilist in the universe?
It's not a question that has any meaning as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. What do you mean? The whole basis is that nihilism is is unhappiness, and he's asking you if there is one. That is directly relevant.
Because it depends on what you mean by happy, and it depends on the duration that you're trying to calculate over. Now and then, there's probably some deluded soul who thinks he's a nihilist who's momentarily pleased with himself.
But that claim explains why religion is sometimes useful.
As a long-term strategy to deal with the future, to get along with yourself and with others, it's sadly lacking. That's why Nietzsche warned that when God died, as he announced in 1850, that people would be flooded with pointless, anxiety-ridden, hopeless nihilism.
Yup. And guess what? Guess what? That comes from leaving behind a belief in something that is not true. And so that anxiety is a necessary step in humanity evolving beyond believing in fairy tales. Exactly, Rhiannon.
So, yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's more to it than that, but I do think it's a necessary step. Almost like the idea of like you need to be able to stand on your own before you can stand on somebody else's principles.
I like that. Yeah. Well said.
That was what would attract them to, for example, to the false gods of totalitarianism, which is exactly what happened, because everybody worships something, even atheists who think they don't.
Aren't there unhappy Christians or
Of course
devoted
there are.
believers? So worshiping something is neither sufficient nor necessary for happiness then?
Nope.
Well, terrible things can come your way regardless, and that does happen, but it's the case that even when circumstances become deeply troublesome, that how you're oriented makes a big difference. So I'll give you an example. So the book of Job deals with the issue of unfair suffering. So Job is a good man who has everything taken away from him.
Real quick, put a one in the chat if you're not familiar, like not specifically, but just generally what the story of Job is.
Most painful possible way.
To settle a bet, right?
With Satan, yes. And so he makes the axiomatic presumption that he won't lose faith in himself or in the spirit of being itself. And that helps him remain calm and forward-looking through his time of trial.
Doesn't he absolutely curse God?
No. His wife tells him to do that.
Thank you.
So I think that's worth discussing a little bit. That when I had that first podcast with my roommate, I had realized that I was a Christian and I'd never read the Bible. So we went through and I read it for the first time, and I read this, and long story short, Job is he's number one. His family is set up. He's got a good farm, and he worships worships in the common way that we talk about it. Worships God. He's a pious man. And so much so that the devil goes to God and is like, I bet you if you fuck with him, then he'll say fuck you. And God's like, nuh-uh. And devil's like, yeah. So then God is like, all right, fine, then I'll fuck with him. So he kills all his children. He kills his wife. He fucking gives him, I don't remember all the exact things. He kills his livestock. He burns down his house. He does all this shit. And he's like, God's like, Job, do you still love me? Do you still love me? Like, yes, God, I love you. No matter what you do, I will always love you. And that was like, yeah, but you didn't fucking do this, that, or the other yet. It's like, all right, bet. Hold my beer. So God fucks with him more and more and more and more. And then Job is still like, yeah. That's the story of Job.
Yeah. I know that JBP has, and it's been a while since I've watched this one, but I believe his way of getting past that is, and the moral of the story is more so that even worshiping God, even though all of that is happening, is still better than worshiping the devil. Because it still gets worse from there.
The false dichotomy. I completely agree. We shouldn't be worshiping evil. But hold my mead. There you go. I definitely agree with that. And I fully understand that if it is the case that God does exist and this kingdom of heaven and so on and so on and so forth, then it makes a lot more sense why it is somebody would like resonate with the story of Job. You know, like Maverick saying, Job's story has helped me. If you believe that it is all for a reason, then that makes sense. But it begs the question, like, why? Why did you need to prove yourself to a fallen angel who is pure evil? You're God. You're having petty bets and using people's lives, and I'm supposed to be like, that was awesome. We should definitely worship this. Not me. Not me. Indeed. God being boastful.
I'm going to have to look into that one a little bit more. Because I think a lot of that does come from the fact that God may not have just been like, okay, I'm going to give him this, and I'm going to kill his children this way, and I'm going to, I don't know, you can correct me on that. I think it was more so along the lines of like, these things just happened. And, you know, God is a part of it, but, you know, it's supposed to be the story of like, even having faith, even as things just happen bad to you, is still better than just going down the road of nihilism or straight evil.
Right. I absolutely agree. That is the moral of the story, what people are supposed to take from it. I just think that's a really bad story if that's the moral.
It's a shit story.
I know sense. All right, guys, we are coming up on the 2.5 hour mark. So if you would like to keep the party raging with our boy Guantek here, wait, oh shit, I forgot to do it. If you would like to keep the party raging, you know how to do it.
Yeah, good. My final claim is that atheists accept Christian morality, but deny the religion's foundational stories.
Okay, well, this is exactly what you were asking before. Atheists accept Christian morality, but deny the religious foundational stories. I would completely agree with that. Put one in the chat if you disagree with that. I feel like we can all agree with that. And I think, you know, most, you know, your typical stereotypical atheist falls very far from that morality because they don't have a reason to care, which is why secular humanism is not a replacement for Christianity. But there could be. Let's see.
Claim is that atheists accept Christian morality, but deny the religion's foundational stories.
Jesus.
Hi there.
It's very nice to meet you.
What's your name?
I'm Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Yes. So God says that you can own people as property. He says that you can beat them with a rod too. He commands genocide in Deuteronomy and in Numbers and in Samuel. I mean, they have a goddamn baby barbecue in Numbers. Like, is all of this in line with Christian ethics?
No.
So then God doesn't fit within Christian ethics.
Yeah. Well, so this is what we mean. This motherfucker belongs in the 2000s debate. This motherfucker belongs with debates that were happening when Christopher Hitchens were still alive. We're just past this, brother. We're past this, and this is exactly what we saw at DebateCon. And atheists need to evolve from this. It's sad. Mark said Satan is the opposer. The story taught the opposer that humanity is superior than him because the opposer would have rejected God if he removed his blessings for him. Yeah, I get it. I just feel like you didn't need to go through all that to prove that, especially to the opposer or to evil.
The biblical library is a continuing story, and everything written in it has to be contextualized by the entire text. There's 65,000 hyperlinks in the biblical text. And you can take pieces of it out of context and criticize them, and that's what you're doing. But that's a mistake. I think it's an analytic mistake because you're putting the cart before the horse.
I really don't think so. I think that if we say that something is Christian ethics, then I think that all of the books essential to Christianity would fit with it, especially if it's like the main character. When we're talking about
how do you deal with
God,
the morality of war?
So
how do you think you should deal with the morality of war?
Sure. Because I feel like the morality, like I feel like Christian ethics, like this is kind of, I guess I just think it's like kind of an absurdity to say that God doesn't fit
I kind of want to say something about this and what this guy is saying right now. It's like, he's thinking of the Bible as like everything all at once matters the same, right? And he's not thinking of it as like a story that will go on. And as the story goes on, even God learns from his fucking mistakes. You know, it's kind of like saying like at the beginning of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker should have already been able to defeat the Empire.
I know just enough about Star Wars to understand what you're saying. I think that's fair. And that's why I say that, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, slavery's in the Bible. What do you guys say about that? But as I explained before, it makes sense in the context. And if you want to, there's plenty of issues with Christianity. There's plenty of issues with true claims in Christianity that we don't need to go down the road of, well, back then they said the thing that was already happening, but the thing like you don't, it's just a losing argument. And atheists still go to it. And I do not get it. So I haven't read the Bible from cover to cover. It just doesn't interest me enough. It didn't interest me enough either, which is precisely why, that's precisely why I felt the need to do that. Because if this entire thing is based on that book, then we should know it. And I just 20 years, maybe not. I missed one here or there, but it's every Sunday we're going to church. We had Sunday school, we had CCD, we had youth group. Never even heard of Job. Never even heard of Job.
Here's a question, actually, for you. Let's say, because you're basically saying 20 years of being like a devout Christian, right? And you still didn't get like all of you didn't suck up as much knowledge and wisdom from the Bible as what you probably should have in that much time. Do you think if there was a Jordan Peterson there to help kind of describe some of these stories in the way that he does, it may have helped?
I mean, obviously, I don't have the counterfactual, but it makes sense. It seems reasonable that if that were the case, then I just probably would have fallen away from religion earlier. I don't know. It's very possible that if that was the type of, like exposure to religion, I might have a very different opinion of it. But
because this is something my wife and I were actually talking about recently, is like, it isn't necessarily that religion sucks. It's that the teachers suck.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And speaking of which, yikes.
I feel like Christian ethics, like this is kind of, I guess I just think it's like kind of an absurdity to say that God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, but sure, well, we can go on my ethics. That's totally fine.
I don't know what you mean by an absurdity. What game are you playing with?
Well, I just think that it's an absurdity to say that the Christian God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, that like the Christian God isn't like...
not what he said. He said the way that you presented it is not the appropriate way to understand it.
Yeah,
Christian
I
ethical.
said that the specific statements that you made don't take the context of the stories into account, and so that your analytical approach is faulty.
Sure.
And this is why, again, guys, we have enough issues with the Bible, with the truth claims, with this, that we don't need to go down this road. We don't need to play these games. Just go on the stuff. Let that go. Fine. Okay. The slavery stuff was before the people of the time. They already had the slaves in the same way. I think it was Lasissimo. Apologize if I got it wrong. Said that's like trying to get people off of capitalism today. It is very reasonable that in 100 years we don't have capitalism. We have UBI because of artificial intelligence.
Robots.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But in 2025, if you just from on high, we're just determining no more capitalism. How do you think that's going to go over? Hey, yo, hey, whoa. We're trying to get along here, man. We're trying to get along here. Let's keep
that right there. Saying things like that as a Christian is why you are going to lose. You need to be able to find the atheists that are going to be able to have enough in common with you in order to actually win. Otherwise, you're just making a wall from the people who might actually help you win the fucking war.
Bingo. Cook, brother. Cook. Guam Tech on the mic, baby.
Context of the stories into account, and so that your analytical approach is faulty.
Sure.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Sure, then let's go through the example. Yeah, so, and I apologize. So let's go through the example. So in 1 Samuel 15:3, God says, go and slaughter the Amalekites, slaughter the men, the women, the children, the infants.
So Jordan should be like, okay, why did he say that? I don't know the answer, but I'm sure there is one.
What's the justification for that? Is that in line
That's a
with
good
Christian
question.
ethics?
That's a good question. I don't really know what to do with the terrible, blood-soaked, saturated history of the human past. I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows. I mean, what you try to do in your own life, as far as I can tell, is to conduct yourself in a manner that makes such things much more unlikely.
I totally agree.
We're all saddled with the problem of the catastrophes that got us here, aren't we?
Yeah, but this one was commanded by God. That's the problem. That's what differentiates it from anything else, is that this one, it's God saying, go and do this atrocity.
Do you think that there's ever such a thing as a righteous war?
I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. It would probably be situational.
Well, I mean, any disagreement? Anybody put one in the chat if you think there's no such thing as a righteous war. Go on, Jack. Do you think there's no such thing as a righteous war?
Ukraine is the most righteous war that we have in the world right now.
Facts!
Well, right. Fair enough.
But this one certainly wasn't a just war. The context for the Amalekite slaughter is that 400 years earlier, they fought one battle, which they lost, and God says, that's it, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the goddamn earth. And then 400 years later, he commands the Israelites to genocide their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. That's not a just war at all.
So I agree. Oh, sorry. I agree that's not a just war. But John Doe said, one, there's no such thing as a just war. So what happens? What happens if, let's say, China decides to send 1 million troops to U.S. land, U.S. soil? It would not be just for us to fight them?
Or even worse, an alien race came and was going to wipe out all of humanity.
There you go. There you go.
Now the thing I will say about that is there will be a point where it would turn into an unjust war. If humanity just kept on going and was like, well, fuck y'all, we're going to wipe you out. When it goes from defense and understanding to straight offense, and we're just going to wipe you out of the face of existence, then yeah, it turns into an unjust war.
Like Israel and Palestine. Shout out to Marcus. Is this our Marcus? No, that's with a C, right? This is a different Marcus. Shout out to Marcus. Welcome. And according to Christianity, no war is righteous. Well, yeah. Then I guess dude here has a very good point then, right? Let's see how Jordan says it. Look at this fruitcake. Look at this. Almost let it out again. Almost let it out again.
He's so interested.
To genocide their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. That's not a just war at all. And also, a genocide is not a war.
Well, a genocide can be a war, but...
Absolutely not. The genociding of the Amalekites, the men, the women, and the infants, that's not a war. The infants aren't...
Now you're going off on a whole different thing on what is and what is not a war versus genocide. Just stick on the topic.
Combatants.
Look, I already said that it's...
Shout out to the baby settlers.
Very difficult to look at. Past
Now you know
exactly what to do about it.
So that's fair. So he's saying, Jordan here is saying like, okay, hey, you're bringing up a point, and I don't necessarily know how to deal with it. That's fair. We're not expecting anybody to have all of the answers about all of the things. We're just not expecting you, or rather, we're expecting you not to pretend you have the answers when you don't. So here, he seems perfectly capable of admitting ignorance or whatever you want to call it, and that's totally fine. But in other areas, you've got to use this confirmation bias to make your story fit. Doesn't make sense.
Agree. I can just agree on that.
To the gentleman who is sitting here before you is that it's necessary to read a text like the Bible at all of its levels of analysis simultaneously.
Fair.
And there's a directional morality that emerges across time that has its roots in the Old Testament, for example, with its restrictions against murder specifically, that makes itself manifest in the Christian texts as the insistence on voluntary self-sacrifice as the foundational belief. That's a profoundly anti-violence ethos.
Do you have the belief in your theology?
Well, what do you think of that? Wait a sec. Now, redress what I just said.
So I'm about to address it.
Here, you guys know I hate when somebody makes a point and then we just breeze on by. Hey. I just said a thing. Can we acknowledge that I said a thing?
Yeah, you might as well just say, fuck you for speaking. Next.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Marcus said, Jesus was our perfect example, and he could have called angels to fight for him. The apostles also had power of miracles, but they never used them to fight back. They instead endured every injustice. And then, fair enough if you believe this, but I would just have to go all the way back and ask, how do you know?
But I'm addressing it with a question. Do you think that God is by his very essence perfect?
Real quick, one second. What's easier, the private chat here in StreamYard or Discord?
That's fine.
You'll have to provide more.
Sure, just like maximally great in all like
I think
the
it's a
great making
definition.
qualities.
Sure.
Yeah,
By
like
definition.
flawless. Yeah. So
Okay,
so
so
does a
wait a
flawless
sec,
thing
wait a
change?
sec.
Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better information over time, or would a flawless thing say, here's what's good, here's the absolute good thing to do at all circumstances in time?
Well, we know some of that.
Wait,
Tell
so
the
just
truth. That's
So
one.
there's a part of that that is really messed up. Like, the guy's basically saying that like because God is omnipotent, all knowing, all this stuff, that he knows what's going to happen, right? And therefore he shouldn't have to learn anything. That's all well and good when you don't have a bunch of fucking 8 billion free will, supposedly, beings making their own decisions constantly.
Well, they have agency. Whether or not they have free will, they definitely have agency.
Yeah. So basically, that the way that I understand it is that the reason God doesn't intervene and do all these things that we need to have a perfect world and stuff like that is because God would rather us have free will and agency to make our own decisions than step in, because that's how you show love. Unless if you want love, the person has to do it freely. Unless you want a slave.
Absolutely.
That's why the angels rebelled.
Bet. And Maverick says, hit the nail on the head. Dilly dilly dagwa. Well said,
I actually just came to that understanding recently after listening to Paradise Lost.
Nice.
Well,
nice.
a breakdown of it.
That's all. Yeah. Constantly updating your thinking is the only way to go. It's the only way to go. So shout out to you, sir.
Tell the truth. That's one.
That's totally fine, but presumably...
No. You don't get to skate over that. That's totally fine.
It's a straw man of my position. It's a straw man of the argument. So
In
the
what way?
argument is that...
Did I skip the thing?
Wait,
Tell
so
the
does
truth. That's
all circumstances and say,
Wait a
flawless
sec,
thing
wait a
change?
sec.
Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better?
What? How do we get
You'll have to provide the foundational belief. That's a wait a sec. Now redress
So
what I just said.
so I'm about to address it, but I'm addressing it with a question. Do you think that God is by his very essence perfect?
Do you think that God is by his very essence perfect? I feel like a lot of people have to say yes to this, right? Is there a way to be Christian and you're saying God by his very essence is not perfect? I think that's an automatic yes, right?
One more time.
The claim, sorry, where am I? He's saying, fucking fruity hair boy here said, do you think that God is by his very essence perfect? And I would think that if you're a Christian, the answer would have to be yes.
I think that it may be that, yeah, maybe God is perfect, but he's not operating in a perfect world.
And okay, how does that affect what we're talking about?
That so again, like, yeah, maybe God can be perfect and whatnot, but then it doesn't mean that perfection isn't something that just stays perfect. In an ever-changing world, it's going to have to adapt to stay perfect.
So sometimes God is perfect and sometimes God's not perfect.
God is perfect up until the point that he needs to adapt.
Okay. I mean, that feels kind of wiggly, but I'll take it. Shout out to Caitlin. Welcome to the party. We are talking about Jordan Peterson and 20 atheists. Welcome. We also got our boy Brad C over on X. So Jordan got destroyed by every question. He just won't answer questions if he isn't comfortable with it. Yup. But because there's so much tribalism with Christianity, you're going to see a lot of people be like, oh yeah, he got it. No, that's a stupid question. He shouldn't even have to answer that question. That's not how you would apply logic to anybody else. Welcome to the party. Marcus is saying God never changes. I don't know. Looks like we got some disagreement. All right, let's see what Jordan Peterson says.
Yeah, so I'm about to address it, but I'm addressing it with a question. Do you think that God is by his very essence perfect?
You'll have to provide more.
Sure, just like maximally great in all like the great making qualities.
Sure.
Yeah, like flawless. Yeah. So,
okay,
so does a flawless thing change? Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better information over time, or would a flawless thing say, here's what's good, here is the absolute good thing to do at all circumstances in time?
Well, we know some of that.
Wait,
Tell
so
the truth. That's one.
That's totally fine, but presumably...
No. You don't get to skate over that. That's totally fine.
It's a straw man of my position. It's a straw man of the argument. So the argument is
that... Wait a sec.
We didn't hear all that, right? I somehow skipped ahead because I wanted to go back to when he... Okay, maybe I'm just
I think the guy just is
babbling.
Yeah.
Babbling. His shirt's too bad. I don't like Gen Z in their baggy clothes. I'm an emo kid. Give me those girl jeans.
You said find one maxim that's transcendent
across.
I didn't say any of those words. I'm not sure what conversation you're a part of.
Don't be a smartass.
I'm sorry.
Seriously, I mean it. If we're going to have a serious conversation, conduct yourself properly.
Okay.
Okay. Rephrase your.
Who the fuck is you? I'd be like, motherfucker, I'll do what I want. Who the fuck are you? If I'm a smartass, does that mean that you're right because I'm a smartass? You can't deal. Smartass. Oh, weak shit. Weak shit.
Yeah, but as we saw, he does have the ability to just shut off the conversation.
Which is why I should use it instead of demanding. You should respect me. Oh, I thought it was a little bit of a weak moment.
Yeah.
Said a flawless.
No, go ahead.
Mary said a flawless thing would change its methods over time based on subject's level. A teacher teaching linear algebra once you reach a higher level. Okay. Not enough. Not enough to
maybe
argue.
A better question is: does God have the ability to be perfect? Like, and that's what I would say. Yes. Like, he will continuously be perfect. It will be continuously be perfect as the circumstances change.
Fair enough. Well, damn, Ty. Hope you good. Goddamn. Someone crashed their car into your house on a Sunday, no less. Why? God, let that happen. All right, I'm back in.
If we're going to have a serious conversation, conduct yourself properly.
Okay.
Okay. Rephrase your question so that, because I must have missed it. I tried to answer it.
So in my mind, I guess by my lights, a perfect being doesn't change. A perfect being, if they're maximally good, maximally moral.
Does our understanding of the perfect being change?
Fuck you.
Our understanding might, but
okay, how do we
distinguish?
Well, I agree. How do we distinguish between that, though, at the human level?
How do we distinguish between
our transforming understanding of perfection and perfection itself?
Between
we can only see through our own lenses.
Presumably, a perfect being would be revealing all of these aspects all the time, especially if God's outside of time. I don't know how a God who's outside of time is revealing different things at different times. That just seems like incoherent to me.
Imagine something that's perfect.
Sure.
And complete.
Sure.
Okay, and it's trying to communicate with creatures who are anything but that.
Well, what do you mean by perfect?
Sure.
Well, they're going to get it wrong.
Sure.
Okay, now wait a sec. Do you blame that on the interpreters or the phenomena itself?
So
like, for example, are you perfect in attending to your conscience?
Hold on. At the point in time when God is literally the one who created us, he could have created us in a way where we would always be receptive to these principles, where we don't have to go across like a learning curve where, maybe we'll understand.
Yep. This is addressing divine hiddenness for people like myself who have spent their entire lives trying to find that God. You all say he's there and this and that and that and that. And I'm trying. I've been trying. I didn't know that there was a mode of existing that wasn't trying until I was in my 20s. And yet, God could have made it exactly as Fruity Boy just said. God could have made it so that we are all receptive to this. If there is a God that I'm not receiving, how is that my fucking fault? If I am actually trying, if I am genuinely trying, how the fuck is it my fault that the all-powerful God is not received by the lowly pleb human? How is that not God's fault? Okay, Maverick says God created free beings that can adapt and evolve for the better. Fine. So if I was trying to reject God or I wasn't trying to find God, then you would have a point there. But I am trying to find God.
That free will is a bitch.
Or maybe it doesn't exist.
to these principles, where we don't have to go across like a learning curve where, you know, maybe we'll understand like thousands of years in the future, maybe we'll do it. Oh, also, if you believe in an all-knowing God, then free will is impossible, because
Wait a sec. Let's not go to that yet.
You threw free will in the mix.
Well, that was the answer to your question.
Yeah, and
you said, why wouldn't God? Well, you know,
it's
1,000 years of deep thinking philosophers would disagree with you.
Yeah, and 1,000 years of, or at least like the last 50 years of philosophers.
You might be a billionaire.
Would disagree with you. These analytic philosophers, people like Graham Oppie, make arguments about the incompatibility of omniscience and free will.
You'll get all of the things that you want, all the thing that you want most in life that seems completely irrational. Just give it time. You'll get it. I promise. I promise. I promise. Trust me. Just give it time.
As somebody not a Christian, all I can say to, you know, what you're talking about as far as somebody who has been looking, most likely what would happen is if you did end up finding God, if you did end up finding God, you're going to find it in a place you were least expecting. It's going to be somewhere just fucking out of nowhere. You're going to be like, oh my God, I've been blinded this entire time to this one fucking tiny little thing. And that's the thing that finally did it.
I agree.
And I can't even say that you will find that. I'll just say it could be there. You know, there might just be things that are in the way right now.
That's why I continue to search. But while I am searching and not finding, I don't understand how it could be my fault. Brad says, if we are going to have an honest conversation, you must agree with me that it's your fault. You can't figure out my complex hide and seek game. There you go. There you go. There you go.
That if God created this world, if he chose this world instead of that world, then he makes it causally inevitable every single action that you were going to make. If he made a world where we were just electrons in love, then none of this would have happened. But by making us in this world, knowing exactly what's going to happen in the future, it makes all of those events inevitable, which means that they're all causally determined, which means that we have no free will if you believe in an all good God or an all-knowing God that made everything.
Yep. If you believe that God has a plan, and also set up all the dominoes for that plan, and then knocked over the dominoes, and you're the 7 millionth domino, what choice do you have?
So yeah, I guess then my belief system is that God doesn't have a plan. He had a sandbox. He had a sandbox that he controlled everything in and everything, but he just kind of placed us here and was just like, free will, bitches.
I could believe that.
Do what you want.
I could absolutely believe that. I still don't believe in free will because of just biology and the fact that you don't get
agency, what have you, like you know.
Yeah, I do, and I'm still. It's been years, and I still have not gotten to a place where I can articulate the difference between free will and agency. So work with me there. But
just know, man, God loves you enough that he's allowing you to just do your own thing.
If he loved me, he would tell me. Shout out to me. Hey, welcome to the party. So he recently became a Christian. He's doing okay, but he's not ready for debate. Why ask a new Christian? Well, for views. You know what I mean? You put Jordan Peterson on there. But to your point, I mean, you know, you could have gotten a Wes Huff. You could have gotten Dan McClellan. Dan McClellan's on all.
Well, even Jubilee changed the fucking the heading for it. You know, it was one Christian versus 20 atheists. Then it's like Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists. Like, I think they realize their fuck up there too.
Yep. All right, let's right back in.
Fully determined, which means that we have no free will if you believe in an all good God or an all-knowing God that made everything.
No, have it your way.
Okay, cool. So then the free will of the Odyssey fails.
Right. Yeah. So the ability to act independently and or the ability to make choices, yes. But to explain how this is different than free will, I'm not there yet. I don't know how to articulate it. I believe that humans obviously have the ability to do this, but agency is, or rather, free will is not required for agency. And give me time. I'll get there.
God or an all-knowing God that made everything.
Well, have it your way.
Okay, cool. So then the free will of the Odyssey fails.
Well, it fails for you. That doesn't mean you've disproved it. I mean, you tried to make the argument. Yes, you tried to make a case for a causally deterministic universe.
Yep. There's a difference because one of them we have, and one of them is impossible. One of them is a concept that does not make sense. If you were born, if you didn't choose your parents and you didn't choose when you were born and you didn't choose your preferences, then you can't have free will. But we obviously can make choices. You can choose to do this. You can choose to watch this show, or you can choose to watch something else. There is a difference there. I can't articulate it, but there is a difference. There's a reason why you've decided to make these decisions.
So it's kind of just like confined free will.
Yeah, for lack of a better term. There's a reason that you made your choices. Because those reasons exist, it's not free will. But because you made those choices, they are in fact choices, and that is agency. So, like I said, I'll get it.
That's basically what my idea on the whole like God's interaction with humans. We're in the sandbox.
Booted tattoo. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Maverick said, atheists define free will as infinite will, being able to choose your parents or being yeah, right. Agency is how defined previously and doesn't impact infinite will. All right, fair enough. Well, Christians are saying that people have a free will, so that's kind of the argument that Peterson's making right now.
Yes, you tried to make a case for a causally deterministic universe. I don't think there's any evidence for that at all.
Do you think
the Big Bang and physics?
God could have created a different universe than the one that he created?
I have no idea.
Okay, so then there's going to be a double bind, right? So either he couldn't have done it, in which case he lacks the power, or he could have done it, in which case we don't have free will, because he chose this world instead of that world, making the events of this world instead of that world inevitable with his infallible knowledge.
I don't understand where you're headed.
Well, it just means that the free will defense.
Why does that matter? Stop being. Let go of this. Let go of this. If you're in a conversation and somebody's talking to you and you don't know where they're going, listen, and you will understand where they're going.
Like it just keeps on seeming like it's boiling down to this guy is basically just upset that God isn't perfect.
Yeah, seems that way. I understand atheists must deny agency too, though. Why is that? I think what Glomtech said is much closer to reality than if we have agency, we must have free will. I don't think that follows.
Relevant to the issue.
Do you acknowledge that under your view, free will doesn't exist?
No.
Oh, then do you want to respond to the argument?
You'll have to phrase it more clearly so that someone like me can understand it.
Yeah, gotcha. So God already knows in advance everything that's going to happen, which means that by making this world instead of that world, everything is inevitable, which means that God's act of causing this world instead of that world
doesn't mean determined.
It's causally inevitable if God chooses this world instead of that world.
Doesn't make it determined.
Causally inevitable means determined.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely, yes, it does.
Well, have it your way.
Okay.
That's not the case.
You've been voted out by the majority.
So what? Are you just giving up then, or like, what does that mean? Have it your way. Are we here to have a discussion, or what?
Because he is trying to break down to him like your definitions are not adding up the right way. Like just because something knows what's going to happen doesn't automatically mean that it is always going to happen that way. Like. Again, I'm still new to this idea just because of, the breakdown that I read for Paradise Lost, but it's still the idea that like, even though God knows what's going to happen, he still lets it play out.
It
doesn't necessarily mean that it's like.
The point is on the knowing. So if you know what's going to happen, so this is the neurological thing about this is with fMRI. I believe it's fMRI. It might be a different thing, but I believe it's fMRI machines. They can hook it up such that you are given two options. Like you have something, I don't know, hooked up like a Neuralink type deal, and then you have two buttons, and they'll offer you. It would be like just like the screen is now. You have the option that's the TheIndianJesus. You have the option that's the Glomtech, and you take as much time as you need. And whenever you decide, you just hit the button. You either hit the TheIndianJesus button or hit the Glomtech button. What these fMRI scans can do, up to 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Let's count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. For 7 seconds, the fMRI machine can read what decision you're going to make. They'll do a baseline where you pick the right one. They do a baseline where you pick the left one, and then they just match it up. 7 seconds. So how is it possible that you are making a free will decision if your brain has already decided something before your consciousness is aware of it. And so in the same, the relevance being, if the operator of the fMRI, whatever it is, knows what you're going to do before you do it, do you actually have the choice within those 7 seconds? Are you actually acting on choice? Or is this just your body doing what your body does? Maybe another quick analogy is that, yeah, if you have to go to the bathroom, you got to take a shit. You're not going to shit your pants most of the time. You're going to, go and do what you got to do. But you don't have to not shit. And I think that is a pretty good analogy as to what I'm talking about. It's a mixture.
Mm. So you're kind of operating under the idea that everything has just led up to this is the decision that's going to be made.
Yes. Yeah. So this is we know that the brain is going to do whatever it is, and then your conscious mind will pick left or right. And so before you're aware of I'm going to pick left, the machine can see, oh, he's going to pick left. So even if we say just within that 7 seconds, how is it possible that I know what you're going to do and you still have the choice to do it or not do it? Your brain has already decided that you're going to do it.
So I wonder then if that same thing was carried out and they said you only have 7 seconds to decide, what would play out then?
I think it would I don't think that would change things conceptually. It's just a matter. The reason that we want to not put a time limit on it is specifically so that we can see when the unconscious mind decides and when the conscious mind becomes aware of that decision, and to demonstrate that those are two different processes. The unconscious mind deciding left or right is a different process from you consciously being, I'm going to choose left. By the time you're saying, I'm going to choose left, your brain has already decided.
So there's two parts of that. There's one part I don't like and one part I do like. The one part I don't like is that it takes away free will, right? The part that I do like is that some people, Christians, would say that 7 seconds is God.
God of the gaps. All right, so Maverick's got a hypothetical here. If I give Jesus 2 cakes, one made of shit and one made of chocolate, I know he will take the chocolate cake. Does that mean he didn't have the choice to choose? No, but that doesn't mean that at all. So what if you gave him a vanilla cake and a chocolate cake? That changes things a lot because people don't eat shit cakes, but people eat chocolate and people eat vanilla. You can even throw red velvet in there. The fact is, no matter how long Jesus takes, I don't know if you meant me, Jesus, or Jesus, but no matter how, I'm going to assume Jesus because I'm not claiming to be Jesus. So no matter how long Jesus takes to pick between the vanilla and the chocolate, there is a period of time where his unconscious mind has already made the decision before he is aware that his unconscious mind has made that decision. That is scientifically proven. Moving on.
Well, have it your way.
Okay.
That's not...
Jordan, nice to meet you.
Saying, okay, yeah, we're still on atheists accept Christian morality, but deny its foundations, its foundation story.
Zippy. What's your name?
I'm Liam.
Whoa. What do you mean irrelevant between chocolate and vanilla? This is what, if anything was a free choice, if free will exists, there could not be a freer choice with less stakes than choosing chocolate or vanilla. So if that can't be a free choice, how could anything be a free choice? I don't think anything could be more relevant.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good,
I'm surrounded by atheists.
My question to you, let me scoot in, would be, what does it mean to accept Christian values precisely, or Christian morality?
Good question. And we'll go back to the same thing that I'm still waiting on. How do you know that?
It means to aim up as hard as you can.
I said it says it in the Bible, man.
There you go.
Christian morality.
It means to aim up as hard as you can, no matter what happens to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think that that's a very broad definition of what Christian
Yeah, but it'll
morality
come
is.
in handy at some point in your life.
Right. But I think that many different disciplines and theologies.
Well, you asked for a truncated answer. I
Right.
mean, there's other ways.
No, wrong. So you don't choose to prefer chocolate cake over shit cake. Can you make that choice? Do it right now. Choose right now for you to prefer shit cake more than chocolate cake. Oh, you can't do that because you don't choose your preferences? That's not a choice. So obviously he would choose that because of the fact that he doesn't want to eat shit. Him not wanting to eat shit is not a choice. He doesn't like it. That's not a preference. Or excuse me, that is a preference and not a choice. You can go boil it all the way down. Yes, of course you can choose, but you wouldn't because of the fact that you don't want to. So you could say, yes, you could. I could choose to take my clothes off and wiggle my dick in front of the camera. I could, but you know for a fact that I won't because of the things that would come along with that. Yes, I could do that, but that's irrelevant to whether or not I would actively choose to do that.
Ways of representing the situation, but I wanted to give you something that was kind of foundational briefly.
Yeah,
yes, it does. It absolutely does. Do you choose your preferences? Yes or no? If you don't choose your preferences, then you don't choose to go along with your preferences.
Makes sense.
It doesn't mean it's, exhaustive.
Yeah.
I could say that you would have to believe that Christ is God and he died for your sins, right? But that's in a very difficult way to understand. That's the same claim.
Yeah. If there are other theologies and disciplines that have similar types of values, how then is that definition mean? Wouldn't those also be Christian values under your definition?
That's a good question.
Okay. It's not about the chocolate cake or shit. It's this is to the core, the choice to accept God or reject God. I would like to accept God, but I need evidence to do that because that's how my brain works, and I didn't choose that.
Question. I spent a lot of time studying.
I wanted to say something super quick. This question here that this guy just asked is something that I've been wondering about Jordan Peterson for a while, because there's a lot of things that he talks about from the Bible and his breakdowns that actually have a very Taoist perspective and Buddhist perspective, and a lot of different religions have these perspectives that he breaks down psychologically through the Bible. And I've always wondered, well, then why doesn't he just talk about Buddhism? Why doesn't he just talk about this or that? And he does a really good job of explaining it here, and also why he holds Christianity above some of these other ones. So I just want to point that out first.
All right, so let's back that up a little bit.
Similar types of values. Are other theologies and disciplines that have similar types of values? How then is that definition mean? Wouldn't those also be Christian values under your definition?
That's a good question. I spent a lot of time studying different religious systems from all over the world and found multiple interesting layers of concordance.
Right.
So, for example, in ancient Egypt, their god Horus, who was the reviving god of the totalitarian state, he was the god of attention. Right.
That's where they got Jesus from.
And the Jews hypothetically came out of Egypt, and there was crosstalk between Egyptian and Jewish foundational morality, and then that bled into Christianity. I mean, human beings all over the world have come up with moral systems that fit roughly into a pattern, and they're very usefully studied. I learned a lot about Christianity by studying Taoism, for example, a lot. So I think you can make a case that Christianity formalized the landscape of good and evil more comprehensively and in more detail than any other religious system. And I think that that's part of the reason that it defeated paganism and spread so broadly across the West and is still dominant.
That is a relatively strong claim. That, but I think I might agree with that. That Christianity has been the best so far. I think we can do. I don't accept that we can't do better. I'm not saying I know we can do better. I'm just saying I don't know we can't do better.
Yeah. And I can definitely understand why people would have an issue with the way that it's talked about or the way that the morals of the stories are conveyed. But it does seem to take all of the previous good things from all of those religions take out the fluff, take out all the craziness, and just condense it into something where people can actually use this without having to be like, oh, you want to have a good relationship with your neighbor? Go sacrifice your kid into the fire. Like,
just,
you know.
One more reformation. Speaking of which, there's a bunch of people here, guys. If you are new, make sure you subscribe and, of course, like that button. I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and of course, whenever I feel like it. So don't just subscribe, but ring the bell, and you will never miss an Indian Jesus live party ever again. We are keeping it raging because we got a bunch of here. So give me a break. We're gonna check this out. If you guys are enjoying the show, the party rages on 24/7 over in our Discord. The link is pinned to the top of the chat and is absolutely free to join 24/7. We are in there hanging out, having a great time. And guys, it is absolutely free. However, if you are a member of this channel here on YouTube, you can scroll right below that video and hit that join button. Starts at $2.99. There's a few different tiers, but $2.99 will get you in. It gets you members only live streams here on YouTube, all that other good stuff. But it opens up the full Discord server. So we've got the free chat that is open to anyone. Anybody can join and talk. But as you can see, that is just one of our channels. There's a bunch of different channels here, including our disciple chat for members only, our word of the day watch party, where we're talking about all this stuff. And of course, we have the voice channel here, where we are hanging out at this moment. Shout out to everybody in the Discord server. Say hello and tell them to come and join. There you go, guys. Simple as that. See you there. See you there. And of course, guys, remember, if you click that link at the top of the chat to join the free part of the server, I will give you a one-night free pass to the after party where we are hanging out just like me and Guamtech are doing. You don't even have to cam up. It is a good time. Definitely come and join us. All right, let's dive back in. We're not gonna stay too long, but we got a bunch of people here, so I'm like, let's milk it. Let's milk it. We got Guamtech, we got JBP. Let's fucking milk it.
For the reason that it defeated paganism and spread so broadly across the West and is still dominant, still understructures our culture, for example.
The way you feel about Horus or Taoism or something is how I feel about Christian morals, I think.
Yeah, but how do I feel about them?
Well, that you took inspiration from them.
That's a good question. Maybe you should fucking answer it.
You learned from them. Maybe
that's a good start,
right?
You know, because I would say that actually constitutes belief. You know, like you said, well,
right.
In Noah, in the story of Noah, right? Noah is inspired by the apprehension that all hell is going to break loose. Okay,
yeah.
He regards that inspiration as God.
Okay,
right. And when God comes to Abraham, he comes to Abraham as the spirit of adventure. It's inspiration. One of the definitions of God in the Old Testament, unsurprisingly, given the derivation of the word, is inspiration. And so if you
depends on what the definition of is.
Take inspiration from Christian ideas, then insofar as you do that, you are in fact a believer, which was my point with regards to atheists.
Correct.
Not understanding.
But have you taken inspiration from Taoism or from studying Egyptian mythology?
Yep. Definitely.
So then you believe them under that definition?
Yeah, but I've incorporated them into something I think that's more comprehensive.
Is it possible to take
yeah, it's survival of the fittest.
Inspiration and to appreciate the teachings without being a believer in their truth claims?
It depends. No, I don't think so. But I think
Why not?
There are different kinds of truth claims, right? There's propositional truth claims, which are the truth claims of what you say. And then there's embodied truth claims, which is the truth claims of what you do. That should be prioritized.
Let's not forget that Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris had two 2.5 hour long podcasts about what truth actually is.
Optimally, what you say and what you do would be brought into harmony. But I would say if you had to prioritize, it should be what you attend to and what you act first. And that's what Christ actually says in the Gospels, because he points to the Pharisees, for example, who say all the right things, but don't do any of the right things, and points out very clearly that that's not acceptable.
So like all the Christian leaders today. Got it.
I don't know that the Christian morality, those principles originate in Christianity, because you brought up other things that predate Christianity that you can very closely tie connections to.
Well, I don't think they do originate precisely. I mean, I don't think the Christian claim is exactly that they originate Christianity.
So if I'm living those values, how is it that I'm living the Christian values and maybe not the Egyptian values or something else?
Well,
there you
Software
go.
update.
What?
Software update.
Fair, but if we're taking just the lowest hanging stuff and saying I don't believe in the truth claims, then that's a valid point. Shout out to DJ Isolated. Welcome to the party. We are running overtime, but I said fuck it, let's let it roll. Welcome. If I was there, I would tell JVP free Palestine. All right then.
Pause there. You've been voted out by
That was good. Yeah.
All right, maybe this is the black girl that I was talking about. Is that other girl? I mean,
hi.
Hello there. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What's your name?
I'm Kumari. So I was curious about this like Christian morality that you're talking about, because a lot of my issues with Christianity have to do with the base morality of it, specifically with like the idea of like the rapture and how we see people that aren't going to come up with us with the rapture and that concept of heaven and hell. I don't really agree with that morality, but if you could explain that to me and how I do agree with that.
is this her makeup with this Raggedy Ann type shit where her entire face is red here? Or like, is that a choice?
I would love to.
I don't know. I'm red-green colorblind, so I can't tell.
Explain rapture to you because that isn't something I concern myself with, and that's more of a sectarian belief than something that's central to Christianity. Now, there's all sorts of evangelical Protestants who might disagree with that, but that doesn't have anything to do with me. You asked a deeper question with regard to
more deeper
to, let's say, heaven and hell and judgment. Yeah. Well, that's a tough one, right? I mean, sin, you could put it this way: sin is what puts you in hell, right? And so then you might ask, well, how do you know you're in hell? How about you do anything to get out of it?
Can I ask you
How about
a question?
you know that you put yourself there?
So if I'm suicidal, then I'm in hell, and that's not different than the Christian hell. Got it.
Do you think is sin like a part of Christian morality?
What do you mean exactly? Sin as
Like
a part.
the
It's
concept
missing
of sin?
Okay,
Yeah.
it's derived from an archery term, and it means to miss the target, right? And so it presumes that there's such a thing as a central target, and that you can miss it in many ways. And the consequence of that will be your life will be ridden with anxiety. Your life will be pointless. People will turn.
Behave. I feel like this is Cope a little bit. Like, he's not new to Christianity. Like, he's been studying the Bible and talking about the Bible in great detail for a very, very, very long, over a decade. So, I mean, whether he is new to actually believing the truth claims or not, I don't know if we can say, like, he's new to this.
He's not even a Christian.
And that's what I'm saying. Fair. He may be a new believer, but being a new believer doesn't mean that you're not familiar with what the text says and is and all that stuff. So I think this is a little bit of coping for Jordan Peterson that, oh, well, over time, he'll understand this stuff better. And I don't see why we would see that, because he's understood it for a very long time. He just hasn't believed it for a long time.
See, and actually, I think that this actually speaks more to Christians than it does to JBP. I think that Christians are the new ones who are finally starting to see more value in their own stories than just it's in the Bible. So therefore, we live through it. You know, JBP is starting to add something a little bit more to this, you know, with like psychology, evolutionary psychology, that sort of stuff, to be able to add more context to why this shit matters. And maybe a little bit of philosophy and whatnot too. But I think it's that Christians are the ones who are new to his way of thinking about it.
I can see that. And I think that if that is the case, then it is a huge blow to the way that your average Christian practices their religion. I mean, I think we can agree that the average person doesn't look at religion the way that Jordan Peterson does. So if Jordan Peterson's been right all along, then we're saying all the Christians that are not like that have been wrong all along. I'm willing to go with that, but I don't know in the chat. What do you guys think of Guamtech saying that you guys have been wrong the whole time?
I'm not saying
Jordan Peterson is the only one you could ever listen to. No.
I'm saying there could be more to be right about.
Fair enough, and we definitely see the effect of the crucible. If they're not Eastern Orthodox, they're just LARPing. You're all LARPing.
I don't believe in sin at all.
Well, do you believe in error? Have you made any mistakes?
What if I believe that the mistakes that you make that they're fixable, and so that no sin is finite, and that the idea
that's a Christian belief.
That's called forgiveness.
I don't believe
No, it's
in
also
it
a Christian belief, by the way.
A Christian belief is hell?
No, that there's no sin that, well, there's one. The sin against the Holy Ghost is unforgivable, but that's really the sin against the process that would enable you to learn.
Okay. But there's a Christian belief that hell does exist, and if I commit sin, I'm going to go there, correct?
Yes.
So what if I don't? I don't believe in that. Like I think that when you, can I explain a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. I think that when you commit sin, that it's because of a lot of environmental factors in your life, like where you were born and who you were raised by. And so there are certain things that lead you down a dangerous path. And once you are dead, I think you're kind of removed of that person. There's no like, there are no factors of the earth that have to.
What happens after death.
Right.
So I would ask you, in these times that you've suffered terribly in ways that you thought would never end, do you believe that you had any causal role in that? Like, did you play a part in that?
In my own suffering?
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe sometimes I would say that there was a part that I played in that.
Okay,
but I
that's
also
the thing to find out.
I think that maybe it's like a concept of free will that I don't really believe in somewhat of free will, but I think that there are certain things in your life that lead you to do certain behaviors. And so when you commit those sins, you go to hell. I'm not too sure why you would still be reaping the consequences of that.
Like I said, I can't address that. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of outside of the scope of atheists accept Christian morality, but the idea that eternal punishment for finite crimes is kind of fucked. Oh, Maverick! Oh my God! God damn!
Oh, jeez. Just
Dilly dilly. I mean, hey, when you hit it, you hit it.
Oh God!
You can change.
I do.
Do you believe you can change for the better?
I do.
Do you believe that when you change for the better, you abandon the things you've done in the past that weren't good?
Yes.
I think that.
What does it have to do with God?
Then that's very much in keeping with Christian doctrine.
Can you explain to me how that's in keeping with Christian doctrine?
You believe
if you would go to hell for those things?
You believe you can improve.
Yeah.
Right? And you believe that if you improved, you would let go of things that were impeding you. That's a sacrifice.
So Muslims don't have any ideation of improving yourself. Is that what you're saying? That's strictly Christian. Like, you see what I mean? This is the co-opting of just human behavior. You're like, oh, well, that's Christian. It's like, yeah, because the Christianity came after the humanity. That's why it matches. It's not the other way around.
You believe that improvement would be upward, and you believe that you have agency in that. Yeah, those are all Christian presuppositions.
I guess maybe we have different opinions of what Christian morality is.
Yes, sounds
like it. So I think that my opinion of Christian morality is something that I don't really agree with. Maybe you would define that as like the foundations of Christianity.
Let me give you an example. So if you want to atone, which means to unify yourself, then unify that with the world, then the first thing you have to do is figure out what you did wrong and admit it. That's a confession. That was good.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you too.
My biggest issue here is that it just seemed like the lady just completely forgot about one of the most important tenets of Christianity, which is forgiveness. It's like she was basically just saying, like, because I sinned, I'm going to hell. It's like, dude, what church have you been going to? Like, what Christians have you been listening to?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely won't argue that atheists as a group are not the most familiar with scripture, but there is science to say that if you take the entirety of people who call themselves Christians and the entirety of people who call themselves non-believers, whether agnostic, atheist, or otherwise, typically have a better understanding of the scripture. But that's kind of in the same vein as like, well, illegal immigrants commit less crimes than Americans. Like, okay, that is true, but it doesn't really fucking matter, does it? So,
I also wanted to run this by you just because we were talking about like sin and like, hell and all that stuff. So I feel like what a lot of people might be getting wrong about hell and the relationship to sin is that they think that because you sin and you have these small little things that you did, now you're going to go to hell. My understanding of hell is that hell is more of a distance from God.
Yeah.
The further away from God you are, the more in hell you are. And sin is more like you're laying down a brick for the road that leads to hell.
And that's totally fair, but I think it's completely disingenuous to act as if that was always the way that it was talked about. Like there was no question when I was in the Catholic Church, when I was growing up, even over to the Methodist Church, there was no question that hell was a physical, real place. There were some people in the Methodist Church that were like, well, we don't really know, maybe, kind of. But certainly in the Catholic Church, heaven and hell were physical places that you would go, that your soul would physically go to. And so now, if people are walking back from that because it doesn't fucking make any sense, or at least has no evidence to it, fine. But let's not pretend that a distance from God is always what people meant when they talked about hell.
Well, and so maybe not always that's always been the case for what people meant when they were talking about hell, but at least since the 1700s, I believe that's when Paradise Lost was written. And they were explaining, like, that's why there are different levels of hell, is because you carry hell with you as you're alive. You are hell. That's what Satan says. It's like, that's why he can't
fuck you, you're happy.
Out. That's why Satan can't be happy even when he's in the realm of God. When he's in Eden, he's looking around and seeing, oh my God, all this is so amazing, and I could have been a part of this, but I fucked up. But then he admits to himself, like, this is why I'm damned, is because I have carried hell with me. I am hell, and this is why I'm going to continue to do the things that I do.
So and kind of like when the anti-racists say that, we need to be, it's not enough to be just not racist. You have to be anti-racist. It's not enough to just be a good person. You have to actively engage in XYZ, whatever. All right. So Nick says to Guamtech, my mom thinks as a Christian, the worst sin you could commit is to push someone else away from God. What's your thoughts on this? Interesting question.
Ooh. I don't think that I could really agree that that's the worst sin. I think because basically that person still has the agency to be able to make up their own mind about it. It is up to them whether or not they're going to be able to keep on putting down more and more bricks to get further away from God. So I don't know. That could be a pretty bad sin. But like Jordan Peterson said, like, sin against the Holy Ghost is probably worse, because that's actively saying, like, it just doesn't matter. Like, none of it fucking matters. Screw it all.
What if it doesn't, though? What if it doesn't?
I guess if it doesn't, then it depends on what decisions you're going to make from that point.
I mean, I hear you, but my point is that if all of this stuff is true, then yeah, all the types of things that we're talking about within the context of religion matter. But if not, then we're just spinning our wheels. We're just talking about, the story, and it's a good story. It's got good values and all that stuff. But when we boil it down to, did this actually happen? We have some evidence that moves to, well, some of these things are more valuable than others, and a lot of gaps in that evidence.
I mean, what do you mean by believe? That's all I can say. Like, that's
President
what all
JDP man.
That's what that all just narrows down to, is like, what parts of this do you believe and don't believe? Like,
accept as true.
How Christian are you if maybe you didn't believe that physically the things were real that happened in the Bible, but you do believe in the morals of the Bible, and you do believe in an all-encompassing God? Like, are you 2/3 Christian now? Is that good enough? Like, and then the same thing for the atheist. If I'm only 2/3 Christian, does that mean that I'm Christian? Like, it's just, like, this is why that question is so important.
Fair, but I do think that, a basic definition, like be attentive, prioritize, or accept as true, is fair enough, and it doesn't need to go further than that. But we got some disagreement in the chat. Kelly said Catholic Church is the original Christianity, and someone else, I think it was DJ, said anyone who's not Eastern Orthodox. I'll let you guys fight that off on yourselves. I think it is time to head over to the after party. Blomzak, thank you so very, very much for adding a lot to this. As the resident JVP fan, you definitely held up your weight and made a lot of this a little bit more manageable. And so I'll give you the floor. Anything to say before we kick your ass out of here?
I'm just, I'm glad to be able to come up here and at least give JBP a fair shake for people who may not like him. And I wish he would be able to do it a little bit more himself these days. But to be completely honest, if I was in his position, I'd probably just be like, fuck it, I don't feel like explaining this anymore.
I hear that. I hear that. Kelly Green says, Guamtech, you're a G. And I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very, very much for hanging out. I hope I will see you in the after party. Guys, remember, if you join the Discord, the free link is at the top of the chat. That is just for the free chat. But if you join while the stream is going, I will give you the access to the after party where you come and hang out and get access to the rest of the server. So come on through. Guamtech, thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see you there. Peace. All right, guys. So very, very TJ is isolated. So Jordan Peterson is his villain arc. Might be. I do think that I forget who said it earlier. Somebody in Discord, but I agree with them that Jordan Peterson is doing a disservice to Christianity with this. And I, as a non-believer, I do think that is a bad thing. And I want Christianity to fall out of favor with people organically and naturally, because I don't want to take anything that people hold dear to. I don't want to take that away from you. I just want to offer you something else. And if you're not willing to look for anything else, then there's nothing that I could offer you that you would be willing to accept. And so that's all I want, is for us to open up and try to understand each other. So big thank you to you guys. Thank you so very, very much for hanging out. You guys ignored the fuck out of Morty, but thank you so very, very much for hanging out. Once again, I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense, guys. Until next time, we're live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you are subscribed. Ring the bell. Until next time, guys, we are out of here. Peace.